Chapter 787. This arc-shaped archipelago was named by Liszt as the first archipelago. Apart from the future, Flame Archipelago, he intended to name other similar archipelagos as first, second, and third. As for the other scattered islands, if they were worthy of being named separately, they would be named like Dragon Turtle Island. If they were not worthy of being named separately, they would be named like the first archipelago, second archipelago, and third archipelago. Liszt flew over the first archipelago for a full 3 days. During these 3 days, he and Leo were unbearably tired, constantly using Dragon Eye's orbit to search for green plants on the large and small islands, trying to find sprites, potions, and World of Warcraft. However, these islands were too small to be suitable for living in World of Warcraft. Even if there were some animals, they were only small herbivores such as groundhogs and rabbits. There were also marine mammals such as birds and seals, among which only a small number of birds and seals belonged to World of Warcraft. Even the vast majority of the islands did not have any trees. Most of the plants on the islands were weeds. These weeds were very suitable for grazing, containing many high-quality pasture species. However, perhaps because the islands were too barren, these weeds did not give birth to any sprites. After searching for 3 days, he only found 7 sprite worms, all of which were weed-type sprite worms. On several of the slightly larger islands, there were a few sporadic groves, but because of the barren land, there were no sprites. In short, the first archipelago seemed to have more than 100 islands, stretching for 200 to 300 kilometers, but it was extremely lacking in natural resources. It was only suitable for use as a transit point for maritime trade, not suitable for human habitation. However, it had to be said that the scenery here was beautiful, with one beach after another. On Earth, it would definitely become a famous vacation spot. Unfortunately, no aristocrats liked to travel too far for a vacation. They had their own territories, which could be used to build a landscape manor, where horse racing and hunting were fun. Just as Liszt was preparing to set off for the Flame territory, Achi suddenly had a pleasant surprise. Her blue pupils suddenly produced a deep, star-like whirlpool. This state was almost exactly the same as when Liszt released Magic Eyes. Big Brother, Achi has already developed Magic Eyes. Its effect is similar to the Magic Eyes that Big Brother described. I can see the radiance of mana retroaction. Impressive. Liszt was generous with his compliments. Naturally, it was extremely difficult to improve a battle skill into magic. The most important thing was that Achi was not studying this project alone. She was working on many projects at the same time. He almost took the time to improve the Magic Eye, easily completing the Magic Eye in half a month. Other than calling him a genius, Liszt did not know how else to describe him. Perhaps, it could be described as the blessing of magical truth, just like how Liszt himself was always blessed by night glory. It had to be said that out of all the rewards of the smoke mission, Achi was the most rewarding one, and she would continue to bring benefits. But Big Brother, the Magic Eye is very difficult to use. It needs to be driven by high mana from the weave, and only high mages can use it. That doesn't matter, as long as it's convenient for you. His original intention was only to make it convenient for Achi. As for popularizing Magic Eye, or Magic Pupil, it was impossible. When the time was right, he would go to the Blast Furnace Kingdom to investigate the Vulture Knight, Stephanie Vulture. This Sky Knight was the author of Magic Eye and Aura Decay. Of course, it was hard to say whether it was created by Stephanie himself, but it was certain that it was the Vulture family's inherited Chi's secret skill. Liszt wanted to know what caused them to wander to the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. He vaguely guessed that perhaps the Vulture family and the Sapphire family had some relationship, because the Sapphire family originally came from the Blast Furnace Kingdom. And it was certain that the Magic Eye, recorded on the gold paper, and the Aura Decay, recorded on the silver paper did not start circulating hundreds of years ago, but must have started circulating in the last few years or even a decade. The reason was very simple: the second-hand books wrapped in paper were not old. Thick bast paper was not easy to preserve and would slowly decay in about a few decades. This was also the reason why history was annihilated in the long river of time. After the destruction of the Moon Empire that ruled the world by magic, perhaps decades, or even hundreds of years of war accelerated the extinction of all records of civilization. After determining whether the Vulture family still existed in the world, or whether the family had passed the Qi's secret skill to others, Liszt planned to calculate again. In short, he wanted to pass these two Qi's secret skills as heirlooms to his descendants to create a foundation for eternity. Although he came from a good youth under the social system, Liszt's head was still filled with the feudal idea of family and world. Of course, his own things would be left for his descendants. Should he give it to others? Every day he called Ma Yun dad, but he didn't see Ma Yun dad waive his debt. Every day he called the communist successor, but he didn't see the state arrange a job for him. After all, this society was, everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door, and doesn't care about the frost on other people's roof. Liszt had already separated from the Tulip family and founded the Flame family. From now on, his wealth would only be passed on within the Flame family. He could be close to the Tulip family like a family and do business together, but his interests must be separated, even if Oxtail Marquis was his father. All the wealth of Oxtail Marquis had nothing to do with Liszt. That was the wealth of his brother, Levis, who could inherit it. He had to return the money he borrowed from the Tulip family, and the Tulip family also had to return the money they borrowed from him. Even from the perspective of the people on earth, once they separated, they would live their own lives, not to mention this noble knight system that prioritized interests. It didn't mean that Liszt had to give one of the two dragons to his father, Lee William. Otherwise, he would be considered unfilial, selfish, without family ties, and greedy. People who came out of the ivory tower should understand the meaning of even blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. If it could be passed down through the ages, there would naturally be a reason. How many families had conflicts because of money, and even fought over whose name a house was registered under, not to mention the two separated families. Only when the property was clearly handed over, would there be no conflicts, and it would be easier to get along and be more harmonious. For a moment, his thoughts drifted too far. Liszt quickly recovered his thoughts, smiled, and rubbed a Qi's beautiful blue hair. Then he summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, Magic Eye, improved version of Super Magic, Magic Eye. In a flash, new smoke serpentines condensed. Chapter 788. This chapter is, 100,000 Years of Salted Fish. Flame Territory, Black Horse Island, Thorn Castle, 5th floor, Liszt's exclusive training room. Paris was brandishing her great sword, practicing the secret book of Qi, Flash Cut. This was a light attribute Qi secret book, which Liszt had spent a lot of money to buy. Knights with light attribute Qi were very rare, so Qi's secret books were also relatively rare. The rarer something was, the more valuable it was, the more expensive it was. Liszt sat in a large chair, casting magic eyes, and carefully observed the flow of combat energy and magic in Paris's body. Light magic swordsman is different from ordinary light attribute knight. Not only can they refine their own light attribute combat energy, but they can also naturally absorb the light attribute magic in the air. Magic and combat energy dual cultivation, the magic flow route is also more complex. With Paris's not very smart mind, without guidance, it is difficult to break through the Earth Knight's restrictions. In other words, if Liszt does not help her on the road of practice, she will be an elite light attribute Earth Knight and an ordinary light magician for the rest of her life. However, she is lucky to follow the Dragon Knight as a lord, who often trains her and instructs her on how to practice. Paris's physical talent is good, but her perception is a little poor. Now her combat energy has reached a bottleneck, and according to the normal pace, she should be breaking through to the Sky Knight. Liszt observed while communicating with a Qi. But a normal breakthrough is difficult for her, and the root cause is her body. Paris's success can be said to be due to light affinity, but also due to light affinity. Light affinity allows her combat energy cultivation speed to be very fast, and coupled with her original foundation, she has soon reached the mid-level combat energy bottleneck. But because of the light affinity, her body naturally attracts the free light magic, which interrupts the boiling of combat energy and interferes with the breakthrough. Qi was also casting a super spell, Eye of Magic, carefully observing the flow of aura in Paris' body, as well as the interference of light magic. Brother, Paris's breakthrough is affected by the variable of light magic. So as long as this variable problem is solved, she should be able to break through soon. How to solve it? Qi can think of 3 solutions now. The first is to rely on a special environment to shield the wandering light attribute mana. The second is to cut off the connection between combat aura and mana and re-establish a new combat aura circulation route, reducing the number of times mana and combat aura intertwine. The third is a magic array. Magic array? Yes, by using the magic circle, Paris can simultaneously complete the acceleration of the light element magic, thereby breaking through the bottleneck together with the warrior aura. Currently, we can improve the advanced light spell, invisibility, and combine it with her, flash/, achieving a simultaneous breakthrough. When Paris was still a black dragon, the magic of invisibility was almost instinctive, and she was familiar with it. But at that time, she had the ability bestowed upon her by the light dragon, light and shadow involvement. Now that the light dragon's power had been removed, she couldn't continue using the light and shadow entanglement, but she still understood the principle behind it. Then, I'll leave Paris breakthrough to you, Qi. Also, pay attention to how it works. List naturally became a hands-off boss. I'm going to see if I can train a group of fire demon swordsmen. Anyway, there are no volcanoes, and Leo has nothing better to do. Yes. Qi nodded. She was also very interested in the new training system of light demon swordsmen. Being able to innovate a new training system gave her a sense of accomplishment. It was impossible for a human to be able to train at birth, and it was impossible for mages and knight to appear for no reason. It must be a training system that was slowly explored by the predecessors according to the laws of physics and magic in this world. It was the same for what List and Qi were doing. Maybe it would fail, maybe it would succeed. No one could tell. There were a lot of things to do in the territory, but as more and more talents came to follow, it slowly got on the right track. Needless to say, there were more and more mages, perhaps some left because they didn't like the atmosphere here, but more stayed. The Guild of Magic's experimental environment was much better than individual research. Those who really pursued the truth would naturally stay and slowly integrate into the Guild of Magic. Many mages even thought that the mages of the Moon Empire should do research in this way. Magic could not flourish behind closed doors. As for the knight, there was a large number of depressed knight in Sapphire, slowly converging on the Flame territory. In particular, there were a large number of knight gathered in the Iron Hoof City. Many of them were implicated in the rebellion of Marquis Bull and had their noble titles exploited. The rise of List let them see the glory of the knight. According to List standards, Garcia, Marcus, and others were constantly screening knight. Knight with good character and talent were arranged to train and work on Black Horse Island, while some knight with a mixed bag of good and bad stayed in the Iron Hoof City to work. Anyway, List had no idea of building in the Iron Hoof City. Even the farmland was rented to Marquis Oxtail for farming. It barely maintained its operation and served as a transit place for freight. The sale of sea salt, glass, and white paper spread outward with the Iron Hoof City as the center. What the local officials needed to do was to select the outstanding knight and send them to Thorn Castle. Then List accepted the other party's follower. He had accepted more than 100 knight followers one after another. The total number of Earth Knight in the territory had exceeded 600, and 4 orders of chivalry had been formed: the Orders of Chivalry of the Iron Hoof City, the Orders of Chivalry of Black Horse Island, the Orders of Chivalry of Flowers, and the Orders of Chivalry of the Giant Algae. The head of the Orders of Chivalry of the Iron Hoof City was Garcia, a Sky Knight. The head of the Orders of Chivalry of the Black Horse Island was Fox, a Sky Knight. The head of the Orders of Chivalry of Flowers was List himself, and the members were Elite Earth Knight. The head of the Orders of Chivalry of the Giant Algae was Marcus, who was used to garrison the territory. In addition, Paris's patrol group gradually transitioned from Trainee Knight to Earth Knight. Charles's security group also selected many old, weak, and disabled Earth Knight. Of course, these were excessive orders of chivalry, which were temporarily formed casually. After the founding of the country, the orders of chivalry would gradually be formalized and renamed. In the blink of an eye, February was over. Winter passed and spring came, and the territory's spring plowing work began. At this time, Prince Anthony Sapphire visited Black Horse Island again. List received the prince and his party at Thorn Castle. "Your Royal Highness, I bring my father's proposal. He hopes to join hands with your Royal Highness to launch a great naval campaign, completely destroy the fleet of the Eagle Kingdom, and let the sea return to the arms of the Sapphire people." Anthony first stated his intention, and then revealed more secrets in the study. According to the investigation of the rats of the Sapphire family, after Carl Violet of the Eagle Kingdom died in the hands of His Highness, the light green sapphire dragon did not return to the Eagle Kingdom. It is likely that it has been reduced to an evil dragon in the wild. The Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Kingdom are constantly putting pressure on the border, and the Eagle Kingdom has no time to take care of the sea. This kind of news was obviously nothing new. Because the light green gem dragon was in List's hands. The light green gem dragon didn't go back, which is very interesting. As for destroying the Eagle Kingdom's fleet, it's exactly what I want. In principle, I agree. I don't know how the Grand Duke is going to cooperate, and how the benefits will be divided. The fleet of the Eagle Kingdom had been searching for the light green gem dragon on the sea all day, which had already made him very unhappy. Since the Sapphire Grand Duke had an idea, he naturally agreed. Chapter 789. Father means that you will be in charge of suppressing the war at sea, while Sapphire's orders of chivalry will be the main force of the war. The taxes will be divided equally between our two families. Anthony revealed the Sapphire Grand Duke's interest plan. In previous years, Sapphire Grand Duke had been in charge of suppressing the war against the possible Dragon Knight, ensuring that the battlefield was maintained at the level of an ordinary knight. Therefore, all orders of chivalry's harvest had to pay taxes, especially ores such as metals, which had to be distributed by the Grand Duke himself after the war. This time, Sapphire Grand Duke's plan to let List suppress the war, and then divide the taxes in half was a more reasonable plan. List thought for a moment and agreed, yes, but you need to come up with a more detailed plan. How many ports and ships are there in the Eagle Kingdom, as well as the distribution of shipbuilding technicians, must be investigated clearly. I hope to obliterate all their naval forces in one battle, so that they won't dare to step into the sea for decades. Your Highness's ambition is admirable. As the host of this naval campaign, Anthony will certainly investigate all the details, Anthony replied in a deep voice. Looking at List, whose face still had traces of immaturity, but whose tone was full of shrewdness, he could not help but be deeply touched. The core members of the Sapphire family had a lot of discussions about List, especially in the period following the Dragonslaying War, where discussions about List were launched almost every day. An 18-year-old Dragon Knight, and possibly an even younger magic shooter, was unimaginable. Sapphire Grand Duke knew Lee William, the Earl of Coral Island at that time, very well. Lee William was very courageous and talented, and was a rising noble count with relatively high potential in the country. However, his heir, Levis, belonged to the conservative generation. He thought that the Tulip family would need several generations of hard work to rise to the rank of Marquis. He had never expected such a huge variable to appear. At first, List did not attract much attention. When the eldest prince besieged Juniper Castle, he looked at List and felt that he was a good young man, so he intended to cultivate him. Then, in a flash, Liszt won the title of Viscount and was promoted to Sky Knight, taking away the title of the youngest in the country. At this point, Liszt really entered the eyes of Sapphire Grand Duke. As the ruler of a country, the Grand Duke definitely had to pay attention to the young people in the country. These were the future candidates for nobility, and also the people he sowed his loyalty to. However, without waiting for the Grand Duke to act, Liszt once again became the successor of the Ghostswordsman, a top expert capable of defeating domain knights. When he received the news, the Grand Duke convened 2 meetings with his advisors to discuss Liszt's matter, and Anthony also participated in them. In the end, the Grand Duke decided to recruit Liszt as his follower. However, Lee William interrupted him with an excuse that the son is going to help his father fight for the title of Marquis before the separation of the family. The Grand Duke could not do anything about it. He obviously believed that the position of Marquis left by Marquis Bull after his betrayal had provoked Lee William to reach an agreement with his son to fight for the title of Marquis. This was understandable, so he put it aside for the time being. At that time, Liszt was not a ghost blade. I'm afraid that he had already succeeded in riding a dragon. The Dragon Knight was naturally not willing to pledge loyalty to my father. The thoughts flashed in Anthony's mind. And when Lee Williams said that Liszt was going to pledge loyalty to me in a few years, he was just fooling me. When he thought of this, he could not help but feel unhappy that he was being played like a monkey. However, as the qualified heir of the dragon-rearing family, Anthony did not let his personal feelings affect him. After Liszt succeeded in riding a dragon and joined forces with a magic shooter to kill a dragon knight, he had quickly changed his attitude and placed Liszt on the same level as his father. He did not look down on Liszt because of his young age. He knew that the sea would no longer be under Sapphire's influence in the future. During the internal discussion of the family, his father had said with difficulty, "Sapphire's era as the overlord of the sea has ended. Anthony, when this country is handed over to you, you must learn to be patient and know how to make choices. Unite with Iron and Steel Ridge to suppress Liszt, and unite with Liszt to contend against Iron and Steel Ridge. You need to grasp the balance." As for himself, he frowned and asked, "Father, what if Liszt becomes overbearing after his rise? Then divert his attention. The Eagle Kingdom is such a big piece of meat in front of him. Why would he want to gnaw on the hard and meatless bone of Sapphire? Once Liszt establishes a country, he will understand that it is too difficult for a country on the sea to rely solely on the sea unless they rob the mainland of resources. But father, if I can't become a dragon knight, I don't even have the confidence to contend against a dragon knight and a magic shooter." The Grand Duke pondered for a long time before replying to his heir, "Adapt to the situation." Coming back from his thoughts, Anthony concealed his inner sigh. He found that Liszt's ambition was greater than he had imagined. The Sapphire Grand Duke's goal was to destroy the Eagle Kingdom's fleet, but Liszt wanted to destroy the port and completely cut off the Eagle Kingdom's power on the sea. This was undoubtedly treating the sea as his own backyard and not allowing anyone to touch it casually. Today, he would not let the Eagle Kingdom touch it. Then tomorrow, would he not let the Grand Duchy of Sapphire touch it? Deep in his heart, Anthony was still relaxed on the surface. After determining the overall policy of the sea campaign, he talked and laughed with Liszt, chatting about some aristocratic anecdotes. During the lunch banquet, everyone was toasting each other and it was very lively. Because he was anxious to go back to make the battle plan for the sea campaign, Anthony returned by ship in the afternoon. When he left, Liszt, who personally went to the dock to see him off, looked at the fast palace sailing away, and said to his followers with great emotion, "Anthony is a good man, a qualified heir to the duchy. Except for his mediocre talent, he has no shortcomings." The followers smiled awkwardly. In this knight system where strength was king, it seemed that mediocre talent was the biggest shortcoming. Of course, in terms of talent, Anthony was not too mediocre. A sword saint in his 30s, who was bound to become a Sky Knight in the future, was in line with the identity of a king. As for riding a dragon, many heirs of the duchy could not ride a dragon, and this was not Anthony's only shortcoming. However, looking at the liege's tall and straight back, the followers felt that the liege was right. According to Liszt's standards, Anthony was indeed mediocre. Or perhaps it could be said that 9,999% of the people in this world were mediocre. So no one answered. Of course, following such a lord was the glory of the night, but it was also a lot of pressure, for fear of being despised by the lord. Liszt, who did not realize that he had caused great harm to his followers, turned around and ordered, "Commander Marcus, Commander Fox, prepare the orders of chivalry as soon as possible and form a fighting force. It will not be long before we face another war." Chapter 790. Liszt was already busy preparing for a new war. After the news of the Eagle Kingdom's long-sought light green gemstone dragon was leaked, all the countries thought that the light green gemstone dragon had escaped the soul brand of the first-generation dragon knight and became a wild evil dragon. Perhaps many countries were secretly sending people to search for light green gemstone dragons. But for the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, it was a great opportunity to attack the Eagle Kingdom. With one less dragon, they should spit out a large piece of land. Many countries coveted this piece of land. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire and Liszt had no interest in land for the time being. All they wanted was to monopolize the sea. It just so happened that the Kingdom of Eagle was too busy to take care of itself. Of course, such a good opportunity could not be missed. The entire Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Knight, was preparing for war. This time, I can no longer care about my identity and only let my followers fight. Liszt, who regretted not capturing more great nobles last time, secretly swore in his heart, "I'll capture as many as I can. As long as it's a count or even a marquis, I'll capture them all. If I capture them, I'll have to exchange them with elves, magic potions, and Chi's secret skills." Marquis Nuteo had helped him earn a big elf. Other marquises and earls might not be as rich as Marquis Nuteo. Big elves were hard to come by, but little elves were never too many. Then there was the black nightshade worm and thorny thorn worm. The value of the auxiliary medicine was several times that of the magic potion. Of course, he already had sprite worms. If he could get the potion seeds, it would naturally be good. He also needed the light leaf tawu sprite worms and the rock garlic sprite worms. Currently, he had potions, but no sprites. There are also talents, shipbuilders, and navigators. Capture as many as you can. When attacking the port, I should have surrounded them myself and not let a single talent escape. If I could capture a few Sky Knights, it would be good too. I have too few Sky Knights under my command. Once the Sky Knight was captured, it would be difficult for others to convince him to surrender, but it would not be difficult for him to do so. After all, he was the Dragon Knight who was going to found a new country. However, the Sky Knight was used to the wealth of the continent and might not be willing to go to the sea to suffer. Just as Liszt was happily planning how many benefits he would reap from this naval battle, a voice suddenly rang out. A Chi made big news on Black Horse Island. She brought the Thunder Dragon Turtle to Black Horse Island, climbed the land from the beach at the mouth of the Sea Canal, and climbed to the open space near Thorn Castle. Then, she led Chris, Kenley, and the other great magicians to study the Lightning Dragon Turtle. Kenley was a great sorcerer of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. However, she had won a Chi's approval not long after she arrived, because she had a good attitude and was dedicated to studying the truth. She also had a solid foundation and rich knowledge, which made her qualified to be a Chi's assistant. The turtle shell with a diameter of 100 meters was like a small hill. Everyone who saw it exclaimed in horror. Even Marquis Oxdale, who was about to head to Blue Dragon Island for a meeting, rode his precious mount, Black Centipede, Black Albatross, to Thorn Castle to take a look at the Thunder Dragon Turtle. "Is this another subdragon?" "Father, according to the official name of the World of Warcraft Encyclopedia that is being compiled, it should not be called a subdragon, but a super dragon. This is a thunder attribute super dragon, the Lightning Dragon Turtle." List introduced. Have you tamed it? Lee William exclaimed. A Qi tamed it. She can communicate with the lightning dragon turtle through the vibration of water. She just needs a suitable mobile mount on the sea. The back of the lightning dragon turtle is wide, and I am planning to build a villa on it so that a Qi and I can sometimes move on the turtle shell to work. List outlined his idea. Now that the lightning dragon turtle was in his hands, besides research, of course, he had to make the best use of it. Lee William seemed to swallow his saliva. A mobile villa on the sea. That's good. Actually, it's not that good. The lightning dragon turtle is a sea monster after all. It can't be controlled flexibly, far less than my flame. If a Qi didn't insist on keeping it, I would have killed it long ago and studied its shell. Besides, such a big turtle should be very nutritious. Hee hee. Lee William laughed. You can always find these great dragons and World of Warcraft. Knight's glory favors me. After all, I am the son of glory. I can already imagine how huge the Flame family will be in the future. Flames will burn above the sea, and you will become part of the legend of the legendary continent. Not enough. I need to ride a few more dragons. The ox-tailed Marquis had a meal in the Thorn Castle. After the meal, the Marquis immediately left on the pitch-black albatross. Ever since he got this super magical beast mount, he would ride the pitch-black albatross wherever he went, including to Blue Dragon Island, where it was said that he would ride the pitch-black albatross as well. List just shook his head at the Marquis' ostentatious behavior. He did not express his opinion. The weather in March was always accompanied by drizzling rain. Spring plowing had been completed, and the plantations of Black Horse Island were becoming more and more prosperous. On this small island, there were too many sprite worm stalks, including 3 great sprite worm stalks, thorns, phoenix perching parasol tree, and pea tree. Spring is coming, and the sprite worms should also be bred. I don't know if I can harvest another batch of sprite worms in spring and summer. It stands to reason that with Black Horse Island's scientific farming methods, sprite worms will not be less. Also, a perennial plant should have accumulated enough energy to breed. After inspecting the results of spring plowing, a number of officials were promoted. List withdrew from territorial affairs and began to look forward to the progress of the smoke mission. Just today, a Qi's breakthrough magic array for Paris was completed. This huge magic array had cost the territory more than 7,000 gold coins worth of magic materials. In order to promote the light magic swordsman, it can be said that it really cost a lot. The magic array was a bit like Stonehenge in England. The stone pillars were inlaid with a large number of magic materials, and the surface was also carved with special patterns and filled with magic materials. Paris, dressed in brand new leather armor, stood in the center of the magic array, nervously preparing. As a Qi activated the magic array, the entire Stonehenge suddenly glowed with magic, and eventually, there was only one kind of light left, the white light from the light attribute magic. A moment later, Paris also began to run her Qi according to the instructions. She had to coordinate with the magic array and adjust her Qi operation according to the rhythm of the magic array. This process needed to be run in little by little. List and a Qi watched from the side. One used magic eyes and the other used magic pupils to carefully observe the connection between Paris and the magic array. The running-in process was not earth-shattering, and there was not even a sound except for the bright light. But in the vision of the two, there were countless secrets running. After an hour of running in, Paris finally reached synchronization with the magic array. At this time, a Qi suddenly guided the magic array into the second stage and began to accelerate the speed of the light attribute magic particles. Feeling the changes in the magic array, Paris also made changes. The mid-level Qi in her body gradually boiled, trying to break through. Originally, at this time, the outside light attribute magic would interrupt the boiling process, but this time was different. After the light attribute magic entered her body, it was quickly stimulated by the magic array and also began to upgrade. 1 synchronization. 5 minutes later. The light of the magic array suddenly trembled, and the lit symbols on the stone pillars went out one by one. Only Paris, standing in the center, was glowing with a dazzling light. Slowly, the light on her body began to converge, and only her eyes, ears, mouth, and nose were still shining. These lights eventually all converged. The moment the light went out, Paris's figure suddenly trembled and then disappeared into thin air. Chapter 791. The symbol of a sky knight, Soar, the high-level magic of a great mage, invisibility. At this moment, Paris directly broke through the shackles of the two cultivation systems and became a sky knight and a great mage, light swordsman. She was no longer an ordinary light swordsman, but a great light swordsman. Maintaining her invisible state, she flew back to her original place and knelt on one knee in front of Liszt. Paris suppressed her excitement and said, "Thank you for your cultivation, Your Highness. Paris is willing to be the spear in Your Highness's hand, and be at the forefront." She had completely integrated into the night system. Liszt's magic eyes were still running, carefully observing the signs of qi circulation in Paris's body, and casually replied, "You were able to successfully break through, Achilles, and my efforts were not in vain." Paris immediately said to Acheron, "Thank you for your help, Sir Acheron Rhodes, Paris will always remember." Achilles never liked to beat around the bush. "You have just been promoted with a new cultivation system, and there is still a lot of information that I need you to cooperate with me to complete the records and research." Paris said solemnly, "It's a great honor." She was sincerely grateful. There was no one who didn't want to become stronger, even a woman. Paris was the same, especially when she saw Liszt's youngest follower, Emily, training like a madman. She was deeply touched. Only by becoming stronger could she see the back of the Lord. Follow the Lord, create a new country, and become part of a legend. However, when Liszt saw Paris being so respectful, he felt a little upset. Paris, who dared to kill nobles, even dared to break into the castle, and later blushed when she saw him, had disappeared. She was replaced by another qualified knight under the knight system. It was not that this change was bad, but it was always sad to have a vivid personality erased. Liszt liked loyal followers, even if they were like puppets, as long as they were loyal to him. However, for those who were familiar with him, he hoped that they could maintain their original personality. Unfortunately, under the wave of the knight system, it was difficult for people to maintain their former personality. That was why he had dragged Achilles to play the piano and sing. He did not want Achilles to become the next magician. The kind of madman who twisted himself for the sake of magic research and truth. Paris, you've just advanced. You can spend a few more days familiarizing yourself with the changes in your body. Don't be in a hurry to cooperate with Achilles. Remember to come to Thorn Fort for dinner and dine with me. As you wish, Your Highness. Paris couldn't wait to familiarize herself with her current strength. Liszt summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, clue to fire demon swordsman. Paris's successful advancement meant that the quest was complete. This meant that the light mage swordsman class had a path to take, so the fire mage swordsman class was also theoretically possible to cultivate. The clues were easy to find. He directly asked the high mage, Achilles, "Do you have any insights into light magic swordsmen? Do you have any ideas on how to mass-produce light magic swordsmen, or rather, fire magic swordsmen? I still have to analyze and compare, but Achilles has a complete train of thought. I should be able to crack the cultivation methods of light magic swordsmen, fire magic swordsmen, and other dragon magic swordsmen after some time." That's good. But don't be too anxious. You have too many magic research projects. Take your time. Okay. Even though Achilles said so, she still entered her laboratory immediately. Liszt simply returned to his study and began to ponder over what he had observed during Paris's advancement, trying to find out the secrets contained within. Perhaps because there were too many things he had observed, his mind was a bit messy. He couldn't come up with anything even after a long time. He was a bit irritated. He couldn't help but take a few deep breaths, adjust his mood, and summon the smoke mission with rapt attention. Mission: with Achi's constant care, the mangrove forest is growing more and more prosperous, and the ducklings and little firebirds are growing one batch at a time. The mangrove sprite, Nami, is in a good mood every day. Let her continue to do so. Reward: a mangrove sprite. Nami is also going to evolve. Looking at the smoke serpentines, List couldn't help but reinvigorate himself. Although Nami was not his contracted sprite, there was no emotional difference, and it used its own diligence to practice its value. This made it far more important in List's mind than other sprites. Since the smoke mission has been issued, let Achi take half an hour every day to play with Nami. Not only will Nami always be in a good mood, but it will also allow Achi to be free from the fetters of magic and relax his mind. List immediately made a decision to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Then he laughed. Searching for the giant kelp forest in the sea, contracting the giant kelp sprite Parker, capturing the Marquis of Wild Wave in exchange for the pea sprite Ike, exploring the Fire Mountain forest and discovering the Phoenix Parasol sprite Ani, stimulating the Thorn sprite Ella to evolve into a Thorn sprite, and now caring for the Mangrove sprite Nami to evolve into a Mangrove sprite. The 5th sprite was about to be in his hands. It was worthy of celebration. Very soon, another piece of news that was worthy of celebration was sent over by the exploration fleet using the magic platform. They discovered a large island 400 kilometers south of the first row of islands. It was estimated that the area of this large island would not be smaller than Coral Island. According to the scale conversion, Black Horse Island was about the area of an ordinary county, and Coral Island was about the area of an ordinary city. The area of an ordinary city was about 10,000 square kilometers. It was indeed a large island. The island is lush, there are dense mangroves even on the seaside, and a large number of seabirds can be seen circling. I am leading the expedition fleet to find a suitable place to land and prepare to explore the island. We will rest in place and wait for the flame to supply the fleet with supplies. After listening to the news transmitted by the magic platform, List immediately asked Lucy and Ruth to reply, "Tell Yevich that I will set off with the flame as soon as possible. In addition, tell him not to go deep into the island, but to explore the periphery. The top priority is to search the surrounding waters as much as possible. There must be more islands." With the war coming, List could no longer divide the night to take over the exploration mission. Moreover, the distance to explore the island was getting farther and farther, and it was difficult to quickly resupply. He and Achi could not waste time sailing on the sea all day to resupply the expedition fleet. The 3 islands, Dragon Turtle Island, and the first island were all undeveloped. Now there was another large island, and they were unable to explore it. Even if he went to the new island himself, it would be difficult to explore the island in a short period of time. Although the Dragon's Eye Trail was powerful, if the forest was too dense, it would be difficult to find the plants at the bottom, thus neglecting products such as World of Warcraft, potions, and sprites. When he was in the Burning Mountain for 5 or 6 days, if he hadn't seen the Parasol Spirit's worm stalk, he might not have been able to find the Flame Dragon bird. I hope that behind this island is a larger group of islands. Black Horse Island is 3,300 kilometers away from the first island, and the first island is 400 kilometers away from the new island, which is more than 3,700 kilometers away. It would take nearly a month for an ordinary sailboat to sail. Even if Achi sailed at high speed with the flame, it would take 7 or 8 hours to arrive. Chapter 792. It was a large island not much smaller than Coral Island, floating alone on the sea. There were no islands around List expected. There were not even sporadic small islands, at most some coral reefs. Of course, List was not disappointed with the island. At present, the expedition fleet only cruised a few times in the surrounding waters and did not explore further. There may be no islands within 100 kilometers, but there may be islands beyond 100 kilometers. The name of the island had not yet been named. He had the intention to name it Flame Island, meaning that it was the first small cluster of flames established in the Kingdom of Fire, but he felt that if there were no suitable islands around, this cluster of small flames would not become a joke, so he simply did not name it and called it the New Island. He and Achi arrived at the new island with the flame, and after a simple inspection of the new island and the surrounding waters, the two hurried back to the flame territory. The new island was here. Elves, potions, and World of Warcraft could not escape. There were a lot of daily affairs in the territory, so there was no extra time to spend on the new island, especially with the approaching war. List had a lot of preparations to make. Once the war started, the trade of the territory was bound to be affected. After the war, serf trade and the like had to be prepared now, so as not to be inadequate. So, time passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the end of March. The Battle of the Sea initiated by the Sapphire Grand Duke had officially set a time. Orders of chivalry would gather at Iron Hoof Island on April 4th, rest for a day, and then begin to attack the fleets of the Kingdom of Eagle, as well as the major ports where the fleets were anchored. The fleet of the Flame territory was quickly organized. The three orders of chivalry, Iron Hoof City, Black Horse Island, and Fresh Flowers began to board the ships for training. This battle at sea was different from the charge on land, which required night to fight on the ships. Boarding battles would become the main means. Marcus, who originally served as the Orders of Chivalry of Thorns, was transferred to the Deputy Commander of the Orders of Chivalry of Fresh Flowers to assist List in the training of the Orders of Chivalry. As for List himself, he had followed Achi to the Dodo Island. There was only one reason for coming to the Dodo Island this time: the light green gem dragon had awakened. With the telepathic bond, he knew the moment the emerald gem dragon woke up. When he arrived at the Dodo Island, the emerald dragon that had been asleep for half a year was struggling to walk on the shore of the Dodo Island. Even with List providing it with a magic potion to sustain its life, it still could not stop its energy loss. At this moment, he was so weak that he couldn't even fly. The flame was anchored on the beach. List gestured for Achi to wait on the ship while he walked towards the light green gemstone dragon alone. The light green gemstone dragon turned its head to look at List. There was a complicated look in the dragon's eyes. Even though the Battle of the Soul had erased the brand of the first-generation Dragon Knight, some memories could not be erased. It was still an adult dragon that had lived for more than 400 years. It had its own behavior and personality. Roar! When List approached, the light green gemstone dragon couldn't help but let out a soft cry. There was no hostility in this cry. After all, he had already ridden on the Dragon Fong platform and had become one with the light green gemstone dragon. This was the first time a dragon and a knight had met face to face. In an instant, many thoughts appeared in the minds of the man and the dragon. There was a vague rejection, but in the end, all the thoughts flashed through their minds. List took a deep breath. He jumped onto the back of the light green gemstone dragon and sat on the Dragon Fong platform. The light green gemstone dragon didn't resist. In an instant, the Dragon Knight resonance was completed. It entered the Dragon Knight mode. Its soul was completely integrated, and its thoughts were in sync. List could clearly feel the complicated inner world of the light green gemstone dragon. The light green gemstone dragon could also feel List's domineering heart. Strictly speaking, it was still List who was in charge of the spiritual world. The intelligence of a dragon was not inferior to that of a human. Its spiritual power was also strong enough. However, it was still a mount that was conquered by the knight in the Battle of the Soul. Light green gemstone dragon, our souls are one. I can feel your weakness, and I can understand your needs. No matter what happened in the past, you and I are one now. You will be raised by me, and we will explore this boundless world together. Roar! You want bone-burning wine? Sure. Roar! You want potions, jades, and World of Warcraft meat? Sure. Roar. You want an undisturbed dragon nest. Sure. Roar. You refuse to release your bloodline's power of infection because you are heavily injured. Sure. Roar. Don't worry, big guy. I can satisfy whatever you want. However, you must satisfy what I want. Remember, battle is what you need to do. Fight with me. Production, you are responsible for infecting the light green gemstone mines. Train, you and I train together. Break through the shackles of the Dragon Knight. Roar. The light green gemstone dragon roared excitedly. One man and one dragon reached an agreement. List quickly descended from the dragon tooth platform. Next, a large number of supplies were carried down from the flame, including a large number of World of Warcraft meat, a small number of potions and auxiliary potions, and a batch of bone-burning wine brewed with flowers. Bone-burning wine was a specialty of the royal family of the Eagle Kingdom. List could not get the recipe, but he could make do with other white spirits. As for jade, for the time being, he could not provide it because there were no jade mines in his territory. A small amount of jade reserves had to be supplied to the elves. There was a jade mine on the Coral Island, but the 5-year harvest period had not yet passed. The jade mine did not belong to List for the time being. Moreover, the output of the jade mine on the Coral Island was too small to meet the needs of the light green gemstone dragon. After the dragon-slaying war, List asked the Sapphire Grand Duke how the Sapphire Dragon produced gems. The result was that whether it was dragon blood, dragon scales, dragon breath, or even dragon dung, they could all be brewed over a period of time to form crystal mines, from which a small number of gems could be produced. However, in order to obtain a large number of gems, dragon blood could be used as a guide to sprinkle blood on the earth. Otherwise, jade must be used as a guide to let the gemstone dragon form a jade dragon breath, which would then be combined with the earth to form a gem mine. Coupled with the dragon magic that was constantly emitting from the dragon's body, it could continuously condense crystal mines, and the crystal mines could continuously condense gems. Therefore, it was not easy to cultivate a gemstone dragon. However, compared to the gems obtained, these costs were nothing. Moreover, the most important thing about dragons was their fighting strength. A dragon could protect a dragon-raising family for a long time. Just like a truck driver, he had to spend a lot of money to take care of the car, refueling, maintenance, insurance, and so on. However, a car could also support a family to eat and drink. Compared to raising elves, the cost of raising a dragon could be said to be huge, but the benefits were equally huge. Eat and recover as soon as possible. When the time comes, I will send you to the new island. You can live on the new island for a while. When I establish a kingdom, I will build you a satisfactory dragon nest. Chapter 793. The light green gemstone dragon's awakening made List feel relieved. For the time being, he would let the light green gemstone dragon live on Dodo Island until it could spread its wings and fly before leaving. But before leaving, List and the light green gemstone dragon discussed a serious matter. Did you have a name before? Roar. The light green gemstone dragon let out a sorrowful roar. It did have a name in the past, but after the death of the first-generation dragon knight that accompanied it, its name also disappeared. No one dared to call it by that name again, and over time, even the dragon itself almost forgot that it had a name. Seeing this, List touched the scales of the light green gemstone dragon. I have a fire dragon, Leo. You've seen him before. Roar. The light green gemstone dragon was quite unhappy with the young dragon that defeated it. It said that it would never coexist peacefully with the fire dragon. Of course, it would not kill each other when they met, but they could not live together. If it rode a fire dragon, it could not ride it. Of course, List did not have an opinion on this. He did not want to ride two dragons at the same time. Besides, the fire dragon was a fighting dragon, and the light green gemstone dragon was more of a production dragon. I will separate you from Leo. Your life will not be any different from in the Eagle Kingdom. But you still need a name. I'll call you Ethan. List thought of a green dragon in a game that had turned over a new leaf. Its name seemed to be Isendra. Since it was light green and not dark green, he would keep half of it and call it Ethan. He usually used divergent thinking to name things, or it could be called association. Just like how the little fire dragon Leo was called Leo, there was a game in which the male fire dragon was called Leo, and the female fire dragon was called Leo. Since the dragons in this world were not divided into male and female, the fire dragon would be called Leo. Roar. The light green gemstone dragon, or Ethan, was not very satisfied with its name. But it did not reject the name Ethan. It could understand List's thoughts when its mind was synchronized. A name was just a name. It had nothing to do with anything else. No matter how nice the name of the weak sounded, they were still weak. The strong were still respected even if they had a cheap name. Then, Ethan, take care of yourself. Roar. After bidding farewell to the Emerald Dragon Ethan, April 4th soon arrived. 2/3 of the orders of chivalry from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had gathered at the port of Oxhoof City on Iron Hoof Island. List did not participate in the orders of chivalry in the Flame territory. Instead, he handed the command over to his father, the Oxtail Marquis. He and Achi would be there to suppress the battlefield, ensuring that no dragon knight of the Eagle Kingdom would participate in this battle and attack the ordinary knight. However, the work of suppressing the battlefield was left to Achi. List was ready to go down personally to warm up and capture the knight for ransom. So, father, uncle, feel free to attack as you please. I will focus on patrolling the war zone and capture any knight who resists. After wiping out the Eagle Kingdom's naval fleet, we will immediately set off for the coastal port cities and launch a destructive attack on the Eagle Kingdom's naval forces. Lee William and Miziro smiled. With List, the Dragon Knight, helping them, they could already imagine that this battle of the sea was like harvesting wheat. Soon after, Prince Anthony, who served as the commander-in-chief, also came to see List. After chatting, they checked the plan for the Battle of the Sea for the last time. On the morning of April 5th, the Sapphire Fleet filed out of the port of Oxhoof City. They set off towards the Azure Sea to prove that the Azure Sea was still the inland sea of the Sapphire people and not something that the people of the Eagle Kingdom could touch. The Flame followed the Sapphire Fleet at a moderate pace. There were no sailors on board, only a few maids responsible for cleaning and a few cooks carefully trained by Mrs. Abbey. For the night, this was a war that they were prepared for, but for List, it was just an outing. The Dragon Knight at the border of the Eagle Kingdom was too busy to support the Battle of the Sea. Just like the expansion orders every year, the Eagle Kingdom was always the passive party to be beaten. With great difficulty, they were ready to play big and sweep Sapphire in one fell swoop, but they encountered List. Brother. Achi's voice made List, who was admiring the blue sky and white clouds, slightly return to his senses. In fact, he was not looking at the sky in a daze, but thinking about the fifth move of the Fire Dragon Knight, Dragon Battle Chi. Now that he was proficient in the Dragon Chop, Burning Heaven, Sweep, Swallowing Sun, Stab, and Boiling Sea, Twist, he could develop the next move. However, the next move was a myriad of ideas, and he had not yet figured out where to start. He turned to look at Achi. What's wrong? Achi handed over a notebook. After studying Paris's cultivation path as a light demon swordsman, Achi has summed up the basic cultivation method of a demon dragon swordsman. However, it is only an outline. The specific details will have to be personally trained by brother to verify the content. On the cover of the notebook was written, Demon Dragon Swordsman Cultivation System Outline. Flipping open the content, the graceful serpentines clearly introduced the cultivation clues. She had also drawn many illustrations, including drawings of human meridians and magical runes. After several years of magic study, Qi had become a master of drawing. She didn't need to rely on a ruler, and the drawings she drew were as clear as a photograph. Even after developing the super magic eye, she could draw 3D drawings according to the vision of the magic eye, which could be called a printer. Flipping through the Demon Dragon Swordsman Cultivation System outline, Liszt carefully deliberated for a moment, then put the book into his spatial ring. When the Battle of the Sea is over, I will select a group of qualified young trainee knight and refer to this book to train them as fire demon swordsmen. Qi gave the book to Liszt, let him stroke her hair, and then continued to go to the cabin to do research. Now that the improvement of the magic platform technology had been handed over to Chris, the Magic Eye plan had been developed, and she had helped develop the Fire Demon Swordsman cultivation system. She could finally put aside the complicated magic experiments and devote herself to switching attributes of elemental incarnation. Liszt continued to lie in the rocking chair, looking at the white clouds in the sky, thinking about how to display the fifth move of the dragon battle technique. At the same time, he was constantly polishing the first 4 moves. He strived to turn the Fire Dragon Knight dragon battle technique into a true peerless divine technique, so that he could control the little fire dragon Leo and be invincible. Moreover, he had a vague clue in his heart. Perhaps by relying on his own ability to cultivate to the Dragon Knight stage, he would be able to take a peek at the cultivation path of the Dragon Knight. In particular, the study of the Flame Dragon Bird and the Lightning Dragon Tortoise made him realize that the fusion of the soul with high magic and even supreme magic was probably the cultivation method for the later stages of the Dragon Knight. The triangular theory of magic, matter, and spirit seemed to have to be taken into account in order to reach a higher peak. According to the legends, the Elven King was infinitely large and had turned into a forest, where even dragons lived. According to the legends, the Moon Empire had a magic array leading to the moon, and the devils overseas had a destroyed civilization called the Sun's Child. According to the legends, souls existed in the land of exile, and Curtis Truth created a ghost ship in an attempt to travel back and forth. Chapter 794. The flame was also carrying a large bird, Loki the Chocobo. In the Battle of the Sea, Liszt did not intend to ride the dragon and show off his prowess. That would be too high profile, and it would feel like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. So he simply brought Loki over, and prepared to ride Loki to capture Sky Knight. Loki was only a mid-level dragon beast, and its flying speed was average. However, it had a strong jumping ability, and could jump from one ship to another. It was especially suitable for capturing Sky Knights who tried to escape during boarding battles. The only thing to be careful of was not being shot to death by arrows. After all, Loki was only a slightly stronger dragon beast, and its defense was not strong. From the 3rd day of departure, Sapphire's fleet encountered the Eagle Kingdom's fleet. There was no doubt that these scattered fleets, even if sailing in the name of trade, would still be captured and captured. From the 4th day onwards, they encountered more and more ships, and on the 5th day, they encountered even more fleets. Liszt basically did not make a move in the first 5 days, and did not see many Sky Knights, so he did not bother to fight for credit with Sapphire's orders of chivalry. Until the 6th day. The fleet had arrived at the coastal waters of the Eagle Kingdom, and encountered more and more resistance. At this time, there were already many Sky Knights of the Eagle Kingdom on the ships. Seeing this, Liszt happily rode Loki and strolled around. Seeing an arrogant knight, that is, a Sky Knight who was suppressing the Sapphire Knight, he rode Loki and rushed over. Capture and throw him to the Flame Territories fleet. On the 6th, 7th, and 8th days, they all attacked the fleets in the coastal waters. Liszt captured a total of 5 Sky Knights, but unfortunately, the strongest was only a Sacred Swordsman count. The Eagle Kingdom's fleets that went out to sea were rarely accompanied by powerful Sky Knights, especially the lords who rarely went out to sea. After all, the sea was still the Sapphire people's battlefield, and the great noble lords would not easily take risks. However, from the 9th day onwards, Sapphire's fleet arrived at the already explored first port of the Eagle Kingdom, the port of Gravel City. Shatterstone City was a new city. It had only been built about 10 years ago, but it was a standard port city. There were many docks around it. Basically, it was certain that the Eagle Kingdom had arranged to build this port city after receiving the shipbuilding technology provided by the Bull family. Also, Shatterstone City was built in a location that was intentionally away from the areas that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire liked to attack, such as Sardine Bay, the Yellow Mud Coast, the Roaring Estuary, and the Lush Corridor. He chose the location of the mouth of a scalding river. Enemy attack. Smoke rose into the air, and the bugle horn sounded. The knight and magician of Shattered Stone City did their best to resist, but the orders of chivalry sent by the Sapphire fleet flooded in and bombarded the port city. Charge! Attack! Crush the enemy! Countless charging chants intersected together, shaking the heavens and the earth. Lys did not aim at the city. He only told a chi, splash some water on the city to extinguish the smoke. Yes, brother. It was a piece of cake for a magic shooter to deal with such a small matter. A waterspout suddenly rushed towards Shattered Stone City, extinguishing the smoke that had not yet emitted much smoke. Not a single ash rose. Knight's glorious blessing. The Knight of Sapphire shouted, and their attacks became stronger. Everyone understood that this trip was not only protected by the Dragon Knight, but also by the magic shooter. This battle of the sea was destined to only have victory and gain, no failure. Lys glanced at Shattered Stone City, but did not participate in the attack. Instead, he focused his energy on the docks near the port. He did not care about his identity anymore. He personally led the Flame Dominion, the Oxtail Dominion, and the Orders of Chivalry of Red Crab Island to plunder the docks where the ships were being built. Especially the craftsmen who were building the ships, none of them were spared. They were all tied up and brought to the ships. After sweeping one dock, they went to the second one. The Orders of Chivalry stationed at the docks were already defeated when they saw Lee William riding on Super World of Warcraft. They did not expect that the Dragon Knight would personally plunder the docks. A moment later, Lys had already looted the 10 docks around him. He even rushed over to the docks that were being looted by the Orders of Chivalry and forcefully asked for the craftsmen. All of these craftsmen who knew how to build ships were taken by Lys. He did not plan to leave any for the Sapphire Grand Duke. It was impossible to traverse the sea without craftsmen. By the time all the docks had fallen, Shattered Stone City had not been taken. This port city that was half city and half castle had an astonishing defense. A bunch of trash. Seeing this, Lys despised these ordinary Orders of Chivalry for wasting time. However, he did not have the intention to personally attack the city. After all, he still wanted to save some face. Unfortunately, he did not have any powerful followers under him. Emily had not matured, Paris had just broken through, Fox and Garcia were only ordinary Sky Knights, and Mary and the other vampires could not possibly attack the city. Sai, Achi, you should make a move. Give Boulder City a few water blades. Yes. The innocence and purity of the little siren had long been polluted by Lys. Apart from Lys, she did not have much sense of identity with other humans. She raised her hand and communicated with the magic net. Soon, a huge water blade was formed on the surface of the sea. With a light wave, this super magic named Chainsaw Super High Pressure Water Blade was blasted towards Shattered Stone City. Boom! One blade cut through a thick wall of Shattered Stone City. The 2-meter thick wall was as fragile as tofu in front of the super magic. After one slash, a chi began to form a second one. After 3 consecutive slashes, Shattered Stone City collapsed. However, the battlefield suddenly quieted down. The knight and magician in the castle were stunned. Even the Orders of Chivalry were stunned. They did not know what to say. Everyone fought back and forth in full swing, fighting to the point that their blood was boiling and they were having a great time. In the end, it suddenly ended. However, on the flame not far away, a Qi just calmly asked, "Brother, is this okay?" "Yes." Looking at the destroyed shattered stone city, List could not help but be speechless. Ordinary magicians were so weak that they could not even participate in the war. However, from the magic shooters, one could still see the shadow of the Moon Empire, when magicians ruled the world. It had to be said. If the magic net had not shrunk, the knight would not have been able to compete with magic shooters even with the Dragon Knight. 2 or 3 super magic spells were needed to attack a city. It was simply overwhelming. In the era before the magic net shrunk, if magicians could really cast spells at will, the knight would not have been much of a problem. However, this era had abandoned magicians. The magic net had shrunk, and ordinary magicians were almost useless. More importantly, there had been no news of magic shooters advancing for many years. Even though a Qi relied on the tears of the mermaid and the talent of the siren to advance, it still could not change the situation of the decline of magicians. Of course, List presided over the transformation of magicians into scholars, which was a good way out. "I am a knight, so magicians should change their profession as soon as possible and focus on becoming scholars. Let the knight do the work of ruling the world." With his hands behind his back, List smiled as he watched the knight clean up the battlefield. The only magic shooter was still a Qi. Chapter 795. Shatterstone City did not waste much time. The Dragon Knight and the magic shooter personally led the looting, which was too fast. Anthony divided some orders of chivalry to continue to attack inland along the Scalding River in an attempt to loot all the surrounding towns. The towns around Shatterstone City must be towns that provided shipbuilding services. List did not participate in the cleanup. He filled the family fleet with shipbuilding craftsmen and a small number of knight captives, then quickly sailed to the next port. According to intelligence, the Eagle Kingdom had built 3 large port cities by the sea, namely Shatterstone City, Seakeeper City, and Majestic Flying City. The shipyards were basically distributed around these 3 cities, but there were also many small port cities of various sizes used to anchor ships. On the first day, Shatterstone City was cleaned up. On the second day, they continued south to clean up the surrounding port cities. On the third day, Seakeeper City was cleaned up. On the fourth day, they continued south to clean up the surrounding port cities. On the 5th day, it was Majestic Flying City's turn to be cleaned up. For 5 days in a row, Sapphire's fleet, under the protection of List, fought all the way from the Scalding River to the Savage Plains. Further south, although it was within the sphere of influence of the Eagle Kingdom, most of the land was not inhabited by humans, and there were no ports along the coast. "So, Father, what did we get from this battle at sea?" List rode the chocobo Loki and landed on the flagship of the Tulip family. The Oxtail Marquis poured 2 glasses of crescent wine and handed them to List and Macero, saying, "Basically all the shipbuilding craftsmen were captured. More than 10,000 shipbuilders, most of them young and strong. No old shipbuilders were found. The Bull family did not show up, and all the shipyards were built in the name of Alonso. The shipbuilding industry of the Eagle Kingdom began with the Bull family, there was no doubt about this. Only the Bull family could bring shipbuilding technology to the Eagle Kingdom. List had previously believed that any old boatman would most likely be a boatman of the Bull family. However, most of the shipbuilders here were young and strong, and they spoke wind language, not the slightest bit of Serpentine, so there was no way to prove that they were involved with the Bull family. It seemed that the Bull family had disappeared. "List, why are you so persistent in searching for the remnants of the Bull family?" Macero took a sip of wine and asked. As an ordinary Sky Knight, he was getting more and more high-spirited recently. In the previous wars to open up the territory, he was a very awkward existence. During the battles, he needed to rely on the few sword saint followers of his family, so his words were not tough at all. But now, all he needed to do was sit on the ship and drink wine, and his followers would fight for their lives without any orders. This was not the power brought by Angela, but by his nephew, Liszt. Liszt swirled the wine in his cup. It's not about being stubborn or not. I just want to see if Marquis Bull's grandson is really that talented. The grandson of the Bull Marquis, André Sapphire, became an Iron Knight at the age of 12 and forged mithril armor. His promotion to Sky Knight was as simple as drinking water. If he participated in the Dragon Knight Reserve plan, he would definitely be able to make a name for himself. According to the time, he was already 17 this year. No matter how much of a genius he is, he can't surpass you. Macero laughed. The Marquis of Oxtail also laughed. Liszt was an 18-year-old Dragon Knight. He was only 19 this year, and he was already preparing to build a country. No matter how talented that André was, how could he compare with Liszt? Moreover, the Bull family rebelled against their lord, and such a bad name was hard to wash away. The royal family of the Eagle Kingdom would probably not let such a person touch the dragon. Liszt also laughed. With the help of the smoke mission, the talent he showed was indeed invincible. Father, uncle, these shipwrights are very important. I hope to take their families with me, so I will need you to take care of them for a while. You can tell these shipwrights and their families to go to my territory and be given houses and land. After I build a country, they will all be free people. If you treat these serfs so well, I believe they will happily follow you overseas. Let the ships transporting the serfs take good care of these shipwrights and their families. It's best if no one dies. Treat them as knight prisoners, not serfs. Liszt was not in a very good mood. He captured the shipwrights in the name of destroying the Eagle Kingdom's maritime forces. But in essence, it was still a matter of capturing serfs, doing the same thing as those mercenary groups. The dignified Dragon Knight always felt embarrassed doing this kind of thing, so he was not going to show up in the following battle. Unless there were great noble lords participating in the battle, he would not capture them to avoid too many casualties. Unfortunately, along the way, he did not know if the news had leaked, but he did not see many Sky Knights. After a few days, he had only captured 11 Sky Knights, 2 of whom were sword saints, 4 of whom were earls, and the rest were viscounts. They wanted to come to the sea to make a career, and the local great lords were probably not willing to take the risk. After the defeat in the Battle of Dragon Slaying, the great nobles of the Eagle Kingdom understood that the sea was not a place they could roam freely. Only those small nobles with strength and ambition, but no status, were willing to take the risk of sailing in an attempt to fight for outstanding military achievements. The war continued. Liszt stayed on the flame every day, happy and contented. Of course, Lee William and Macero would take care of the boatman's family. Among the few Sky Knights, 7 of them had already written letters and were prepared to send them to the families of the boatmen to pay the ransom when the war ended. An ordinary Sky Knight needed 1 lesser elf, which had to be a grain or a magic potion. A sword saint needed 2 lesser elves, which had to be a grain or a magic potion. There were also 4 Sky Knights who, because they couldn't afford to pay or were unwilling to pay, simply asked Liszt to follow them and follow him. The behavior of these 4 Sky Knights was reasonable. You can follow me, but you need to prove your worth. Go, follow my orders of chivalry and fight together. Capture the surrounding castles, and I will calculate your military achievements. Liszt said to these 4 Sky Knights. He needed their sincerity. Derek Iron Armor, Joyce Dandelion, Speck, and Vernal Ink. Therefore, they personally participated in the siege against the Eagle Kingdom's orders of chivalry. This was a move to surrender, which meant that they would not be able to establish a foothold in the Eagle Kingdom, and could only follow Liszt to the end. Accepting their surrender, Liszt gave them some time to organize their supplies, bring their families, and board the fleet. Liszt continued to protect the Sapphire Fleet, repeatedly galloping along the coast, cleaning up the remnants of the Eagle Kingdom's fleet. The expedition lasted for half a month. The Eagle Kingdom did not show any signs of the Dragon Knight participating in the war, allowing the Sapphire Fleet to cut off the hands of the Eagle Kingdom, which had reached out to the sea for the first time. Woo 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 woo. The horn sounded, announcing the end of the War of the Sea. The Sapphire Knight, who had plundered a lot, began to board the ships and leave the coast with a large number of knight captives, craftsmen, and serfs. Those ships of the Eagle Kingdom that could be sailed away, and those that could not were sunk in the sea. Chapter 796. On the way back. List was complacent. The sea war ended smoothly, and the Eagle Kingdom's naval forces were almost destroyed. The Azure Sea became the Grand Duchy of Sapphire's inland sea again, and there was no longer any hindrance. Sea trade would also be much safer. Now, the trade of glass, white paper, and sea salt in the Flame territory had been slowly developed. There were no ships of the Eagle Kingdom on the sea, which was very convenient for him to smuggle with Marquis Nuteo. Serfs had always been List's most anticipated trade goods. And in this sea war, almost all the shipbuilders of the Eagle Kingdom were captured by him. Tens of thousands of shipbuilders were bound to expand the development of shipbuilding in the Flame territory and provide more ships for the territory in the near future. In addition to the captured sailors and captains, a huge sailing fleet could be formed in a short time to prepare for the relocation of the territory and the exploration of the new island. The population is always the biggest constraint. In the future, this kind of sea war, expansion order, and other similar campaigns have to be launched. While the Eagle Kingdom is weak, I have to bite off a few pieces of fat. Otherwise, even if I occupy an island larger than the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, I still can't develop. But in fact, building a country was probably just a realization of List's self-worth. He did not necessarily have to build a perfect country. It was enough to feed the dragon. He was excited for a moment, and then he called out the smoke mission. Mission: with Achi's constant care, the mangrove forest is becoming more and more prosperous, and the ducklings and little firebirds are growing. Mangrove Fairy Nami is in a good mood every day. Let her continue to be so. Reward: a mangrove fairy. The mission was still the previous mission, and it was not completed. List was not too anxious about this. After all, it was the evolution of a fairy, and it could not be rushed. But he was concerned about another situation. In the previous festivals and wars, there were missions with unknown rewards. Why did there not appear this time? Is it because Nami's evolution mission was not completed, and the unknown reward mission was delayed? Or is it because I have become a Dragon Knight and can lead the war, so I don't have to wait for the war to end? He did not know. He could only wait for the next war to start and see if there would continue to be missions with unknown rewards. He thought that nothing would happen on the way back, but Achi gave him a huge surprise. Every day, she would control the waterspout to propel the flame. She was already extremely familiar with water magic, and she would often practice super magic to familiarize herself with the nature of super magic. Finally, during today's voyage, an inspiration suddenly flashed in her mind. Big brother, Achi understands. Achi understands how water magic transforms into ice magic. It is the movement of magic particles that brings about different properties. And if Achi wants to switch the nature of the magic power of elemental incarnation, she needs to change the movement of the particles. Well, isn't this the connection between the motion of particles and the nature of magic power that I've told you before? List remembered talking about the motion of particles. He had also asked Achi to conduct a special study to confirm the existence of magic particles. Achi nodded and said, Big brother did say that before, but Achi always thought that particle motion was just pure particle motion. This time, the particle motion I thought of was the internal motion of particles. Well, a more vivid analogy should be that the particle motion that I previously thought was similar to the revolution of a planet, but this time, the particle motion is the rotation of a planet. Revolution, rotation. With that said, List instantly understood. I see, then have you completed the switch to elemental incarnation of the ice attribute? It's basically done. Big brother, please look with the eye of magic. Chi stood at the bow of the ship and raised her left hand. Her snow-white and slender palm did not move much, but in the vision of the eye of magic, the light blue water attribute magic power gradually faded, turned white, and finally became a snow-white color. She had completed the switch of the nature of the magic power. Soon, the nature of the ice attribute was completed on her left arm. The nature of the magic power changed at the elbow, but the body was still water magic. Big brother, Chi's elemental incarnation is still a little difficult for the time being, but I can already release ice magic. Magic power operated. The magic net appeared. The next moment, a waterspout rose. When it rose to the bow of the ship, the waterspout suddenly made a cracking sound and quickly froze. Clatter. The frozen icicle fell on the bow and broke into several pieces. Wonderful! List exclaimed loudly, as expected of my good Chi, in terms of magic talent, you are stronger than any other magician. I can imagine how powerful you will be after you complete the change of the nature of all the magic attributes. Chi showed a slightly playful smile. Hee, can Chi beat Big Brother? Well, don't be arrogant, little girl. I am a fire dragon knight, and my strength will become stronger and stronger in the future. But I look forward to the day when you and I can break through the shackles of Dragon Knight and Magic Shooter, and climb to a more powerful realm. The world is vast, and we need to see more. If Big Brother wants to see the world, Chi will go with Big Brother. Of course I will bring you along. The fleet was still sailing on the sea, and List had already returned to the territory on the flame. Since Chi became a magic shooter, sailing was nothing more than traveling around by high-speed rail. Even during the Battle of the Sea, he let Chi return to the territory many times to bring supplies to the Dodo Island to take care of the light green gem dragon. This light green gem dragon, which had been asleep for half a year, could fly for a short period of time after a month of recuperation. Its energy had recovered quite well. But there was another piece of news that was not very happy. The exploration ship led by Yevich Peanut explored the area around the new island for a few days, but still did not find a second island. It was basically confirmed that this was an isolated island. It was not an archipelago, just an isolated island. Therefore, the development value of this island, which had high hopes placed on it, was greatly reduced. In any case, continue to search for the archipelago. I will send a few palace speedboats to help you explore the sea and try to find a suitable archipelago as soon as possible. Even so, once the sailing distance exceeded 5,000 kilometers, List was ready to give up exploring the southern waters, turn back, and explore the northwest waters of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. There was also an endless ocean there, and perhaps there were archipelagos, but the location was not good. At that time, perhaps List would not have to face the Eagle Kingdom, but the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. But who cares, I already have 2 dragons and a magic shooter. Even if it's the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, I will still rob it. Many dragons, willful. Chapter 797. After the war, it was time to count the dividends and digest the war gains. Tens of thousands of boatmen and their families, thousands of knight and their families, were arranged to wait in Iron Shoe City. After careful screening, these boatmen and knight would be moved to Black Horse Island. List did not worry much about these jobs. He only needed to show up and accept the loyalty of the screened knight. The construction of the Flame territory was booming, and the search for overseas islands was also cautious. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Among the captured knight, 2 more knights swore allegiance to List, and one of them was a sacred swordsman earl. Durut, are you really going to give up your earl fief and title in the kingdom of Eagle and follow me? List was surprised by the choice of the sacred swordsman earl, Durut Red Apricot. To become an earl in the kingdom of Eagle, it was impossible for him to be without a foundation. To be willing to give up the Earl fief, this courage could not be underestimated. Since Durut made his decision, he said very calmly, "Your Royal Highness, I do have an Earl fief, and my family is very prosperous. However, my territory, Binhai, was originally waiting for His Royal Highness Alonso's plan to succeed and make meritorious service from the sea. But now that the Kingdom of Eagles Sea plan is over, my progress has been blocked." List could not deny this. Durut continued, "But your Royal Highness plans to establish a new country, and opportunities to make meritorious service are everywhere. And with the strength of your Royal Highness and Archmage Achilles, dominating the Aqua Sea is just around the corner. My defeat and capture may be the guidance of the glory of the night." Defeated and captured, but still able to speak of the glory of the night. List wanted to laugh a little, but he did not. "Now that you have made a decision, you can swear allegiance to me. But the ransom still needs to be paid, and I will retain your title of Earl. You can form your own orders of chivalry, fight with me, and occupy a place in the new country." "Thank you, your Royal Highness. Durut Red Apricot is willing to drive for your Royal Highness." Originally, the List family did not intend to keep the noble lords who surrendered to them, and continued to keep their titles. However, when he thought about it carefully, once the new country was established, there would be many deserted islands waiting to be built. Instead of making him work himself, it was better to throw this trouble to these followers who had defected, keep their titles, and let them frantically plunder the mainland in order to develop the island. In this way, he only needed to focus on the development of a few large islands. For the sake of their own interests, the nobles who surrendered to him would no longer have anything to do with the Eagle Kingdom. Just like the nobles of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, even if the island was not rich, they were still willing to stay and develop in Sapphire because they could rob it. This was especially so when one could only rob others, but others could not rob oneself. This feeling was especially addictive and irresistible. List had also tasted the sweetness after a few exploration orders. Now, all he wanted was to snatch. If the Eagle Kingdom dared to play the dragon-slaying war, he would rob the Eagle Kingdom to the end and ruthlessly cut off a few pieces of fat meat. So, he publicized the surrender of Duarte Red Apricot. Of the remaining 5 Sky Knights who were unwilling to surrender, 3 of them decided to surrender after hesitating. Only 2 Sky Knights were unwilling to surrender and were only willing to pay the ransom to return to the Eagle Kingdom. Calculating the time, their families should have sent the ransom over. After recruiting 9 Sky Knight followers in a row, List was in a good mood, and he wantonly awarded titles in his territory, rewarding the elder followers of the territory. The captain of the expedition fleet, Yevich, was promoted from a civilian to a viscount, which was equivalent to restoring his official position, but the fief was not yet determined. List also promised that when he found a suitable archipelago to build a country, he would be directly promoted to count. Garcia, head of the Orders of Chivalry of the Iron Hoof City, was promoted from a civilian to a viscount, which was equivalent to restoring his official position, but the fief was not yet determined. Fox, head of the Orders of Chivalry of the Black Horse Island, was promoted from a civilian to a viscount, which was also equivalent to restoring his official position, but the fief was not yet determined. These 2 former followers of Alonso Cyclamen have been completely integrated into the Flame territory. Marcus, consultant of the Kelp City and head of the Orders of Chivalry, was promoted from a Lord Knight to a Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. Gort, consultant of the Iron Hoof City, was promoted from a Lord Knight to a Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. Charles, head of the Black Horse Island Security, was promoted from a Lord Knight to a Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. In addition, 7 followers, including Griffin Haystack, who were originally promoted to Lord Knight, were all promoted to Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. In addition, Paris, the head of the Black Horse Island Patrol, Blair, the administrative officer of the Iron Hoof City, Isaiah, the administrative officer of the Kelp City, Zambrata, the diplomat of the Black Horse Island, Costo, the maritime officer of the Black Horse Island, and other major officials of the territory, as well as the main members of the Orders of Chivalry, List, were directly promoted to Baron. There were also a large number of middle-level officials and Earth Knights who were awarded the title of Lord Knight, completing the transformation from civilians to nobles. Although many people's promotions and titles did not meet the requirements for military service, List did not care at all. They were all empty promises anyway. When the islands were found, these promises would be fulfilled. If they could not be found, then they would just be an honorary title for life. If they were found, then they would be like the surrendered Sky Knights, choosing any deserted island. No matter what the situation would become in the future. At least now the entire Flame territory was boiling. The knight and officials who were promoted and titled were in high spirits, praising the greatness of List. The officials were full of energy, the knight was loyal, and the Flame territory's foundation, which had been impetuous because of the rapid expansion, was quickly solidified. Everyone felt the benefits of following the Dragon Knight. Now that the country had not yet been founded, they just followed him out to rob once, and the glory was spread. How much glory could be spread in the future when the country was founded? Especially the 9 new Sky Knights, who had already swept away the resentment of being captured, and began to look forward to List's country. As a result, under the Flame Marquis List now had an Earl follower, Durut Red Apricot, 11 Viscount followers, more than 30 Baron followers, and hundreds of Lord Knight followers. A simple team of Marquis followers was quickly built, which would also be the foundation for the future country. In addition to the team of followers of Marquis Oxdale, the basic framework for the country was basically completed. In a good mood, List gathered most of his followers at his Thorn Castle and ate and drank for several days. In this extravagant atmosphere of nobility, Achi gradually completed the Ice Elemental incarnation. Because of her care, Nami, who was happy every day, finally began to wither. Wither meant that she was evolving. Chapter 798. Mission: May is the season for plants to grow vigorously. The crops on Black Horse Island continue to grow. As the Lord, you have not performed your duty of patrolling the territory for a long time. Why not patrol the crops in the territory and check the growth of the crops? Reward: a large number of sprite worms. Nami's evolution mission had just ended, and the new mission brought a large number of sprites to List. After several years of plowing and fertilizing, Black Horse Island's crops were far more lush than those on other islands, so the birth of sprite worms began to increase. This time, List and Achi operated magic eyes and magic pupils together and carefully inspected the land and sea of the island. He found 3 wheat sprites, 1 barley sprite, 1 thorn sprite, 1 pea sprite, 1 rubber sprite, 1 peanut sprite, 1 red tree sprite, 1 corn sprite, 1 sweet coconut sprite, 2 algae sprite. He named them Black Algae Worm and Brown Algae Worm, and let Achi contract them. He didn't want to sign a contract with sprite worms himself, he thought it was too troublesome. There were a total of 16 sprite worms. This was the result of more than 3 years of scientific farming on Black Horse Island under the leadership of List, building toilets, piling manure, building ditches, artificial irrigation, selecting fine seeds, fine farming, weeding and pruning, and reasonable lighting. The Guild of Magic has a special research group to study the relationship between scientific farming and sprite worm breeding, and preliminary conclusions have been drawn through big data. Sprite worm breeding is a probability event, that is to say, this thing is related to genetic mutation. It has nothing to do with how well the plant grows, but keeping the plant vigorous and healthy has a great protection for the breeding of sprite worms. Malnourished plants that have just mutated into sprite worms will abort in the next moment, but healthy crops on Black Horse Island are difficult to abort. Therefore, scientific farming is a powerful means to greatly increase the number of sprite worms. At present, the secret of sprite worms has not been solved. This is the only way to promote the growth of sprite worms. Mission completed, reward a large number of sprite worms. These 16 sprite worms were basically in the process of breeding, but the territory soon ushered in another large number of sprites. The Sky Knight followers who surrendered to List migrated their families to Black Horse Island. 2 Sky Knights who were unwilling to surrender also paid the ransom and left Black Horse Island. After paying the ransom, there were a total of 3 sprites, an oat sprite, a peanut sprite, and a sisal sprite. As for the sprites of the 11 followers, they had contributed a total of 12 sprites. Among them, Earl Duroot Red Apricot had contributed 2 corn sprites, 3 barley sprites, 1 orange sprite, 1 mango sprite, 1 licorice sprite, 1 glutinous rice sprite, and 1 apple sprite. He had also obtained a black nightshade fairy and a bramble fairy. Originally, there were 2 Sky Knights who wanted to trade grain sprites, but List found out that they had contracted black nightshade and thorn sprites. Without a doubt, they immediately exchanged these 2 sprites for ransom. These Sky Knights were very shabby and did not even have a big sprite. The remaining sprites also entered Black Horse Island to temporarily help List with farming, but List would pay them according to the contribution of the sprites. In short, this was the transitional stage. With the support of the dream of founding a nation, no one would raise too many objections. Now the number of sprites in the territory has skyrocketed. War is the easiest way to make money. My trade businesses are still far from the wealth of war. The most important thing is that trade profits flow slowly, but the benefits of war come in an instant. After counting his gains from the sea battle, List was in a good mood and looked at the new smoke mission. Mission: after the war, the Sky Knights have nothing to do. Instead of sitting around in the territory, why not find something for them to do? The arrival of a large number of shipwrights has allowed the shipbuilding industry on Black Horse Island to flourish. Please build a 3-masted sailboat that meets the standard. Reward: the abnormality of the Heart Island. It was not difficult to build a 3-masted sailboat and find something for the knights to do. List had already planned this for a long time. He ordered 10 Palace Fast sailboats from the Sapphire family and was ready to arrange another 6 Palace Fast sailboats to form 2 expedition fleets to join the island search in the southern waters. At present, the progress of Yevich's expedition fleet search was not very satisfactory. The expedition fleet was equipped with wind-calming beads and water-calming beads, and the offshore waters were free to gallop, but the exploration results were limited. In fact, Yevich could not be blamed for not paying attention. The speed of the fleet was limited, and the sea was infinite. It was really difficult to find the island. Adding 2 more expedition fleets to make up 3 fleets and 9 Palace Fast sailboats should greatly expand the scope of the sea search. If we can find it, we should find it as soon as possible and develop it as soon as possible. If we can't find it, we should move to the sea area as soon as possible and explore the sea area of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. After thinking, his eyes were fixed on the abnormality of the Heart Island. There are still problems with the Heart Island. The light emerald mine seems to be ready for mining. It is time to mine and investigate the real secrets inside the Heart Island. List was a man of action. With the reminder of the smoke mission, he immediately decided to take action to investigate. The members of the investigation were limited to him and a chi. The flame whistled across the sea and arrived at the Heart Island a few hours later. The island, which had all the crystal cyathea ferns cut down and a chi baptized with seawater, was bare. There were no new saplings in the place where the heart fruit tree had grown. A chi: check if there are any abnormalities on the Heart Island. After landing on the island, List immediately began to investigate. However, he did not have the intention to find any abnormalities. The smoke mission had not been completed yet, and the abnormalities on the Heart Island might not have occurred yet. Therefore, it was better to nip the problem in the bud. Or perhaps he could discover the abnormalities ahead of time and directly change the mission, starting a new one. Unfortunately, after a careful inspection, he did not find any abnormalities on the Heart Island. However, there was already a layer of light green crystals under the soil layer. List excavated a crystal mine and found 2 light green gems the size of a fist scattered around. So these are the light green gems produced by the light emerald dragon Ethan. It doesn't seem to be very abundant. Even if the entire island has become a light green gem mine, there wouldn't be too many gems left. I'm sorry for the blood essence that the light green gem dragon leaked back then. However, it's hard to say. Perhaps the heart fruit tree absorbed too much. However, he soon discovered that the magic within the crystal mine was still flowing slowly, as if it was nurturing new light green gems. Does this mean that the light green gem mine is actually not fully developed? Chapter 799. He returned from Heart Island without success. List couldn't wait to urge the construction of the Black Horse Island dock. He is a person full of contradictions. Sometimes he is leisurely, but sometimes he can't wait to get results. However, the development of the shipbuilding industry is not easy to bear fruit. Even with the guidance of the Sapphire family shipbuilders, even if the original shipbuilders of the territory fumbled and studied, they still did not have a good grasp of the 3-masted sailboat technology. Time passed by as they accumulated technology and continued to experiment. While waiting silently for the dock to build the 3-masted sailboat, List also calmed down and carefully polished the Fire Dragon Knight, Dragon Battle Aura secret book. One day, when he was inspecting the craftsmen in the subway, he saw the blacksmiths regularly beating the iron blocks with sledgehammers and small hammers, slowly hammering the red-hot iron blocks into shape. He suddenly flashed countless inspirations. Soon afterward, he created the 5th move according to the inspiration of the hammering, earth-shaking. Since then, the Dragon Battle Aura secret book has 5 moves. Dragon Slash, Burning the Sky, Swallowing the Sun, Boiling the Sea, and Earth-Shaking Hammer. Together with the little fire dragon Leo, the strength of the Fire Dragon Knight skyrocketed. Although the next stage of the Dragon Knight practice is still unknown, at the current stage, his strength can continue to skyrocket. According to his experience of riding 2 dragons, his combat power is about half of the peak stage Light Emerald Dragon Knight. Once he becomes a peak stage Fire Dragon Knight, his strength will surpass that of the peak stage Light Emerald Dragon Knight. To put it bluntly, the peak stage Dragon Knight is equivalent to the Earth Knight with fighting skills. The method of taking drugs is unknown. I can only improve my strength by constantly honing my fighting skills. After the soul is complete, I am afraid that I can only improve my strength by constantly honing the Dragon Battle Aura secret book. List sighed with emotion. But soon he was relieved. Other Dragon Knights can only waste time in the Dragon Knight stage, but I have a clue about the next stage of the Dragon Knight. With the help of the smoke mission and the effect of the magic eye, it will not be difficult to find a way to break through the Dragon Knight stage. With the smoke mission, which was suspected to be the power of destiny, List's self-confidence was so free and easy. June arrived in the blink of an eye. The light green gem dragon's body had already recovered, and it could fight in the sky and display its might. Of course, its foundation was still weak, and it would take several years of recuperation before it could return to its peak. No matter what. List left the little fire dragon Leo to sleep on Black Horse Island and went to Dodo Island. He rode the light emerald dragon Ethan and migrated south. He planned to take the light emerald dragon with a chi to a new island that had not yet been explored, that is, the large island south of the first island. Not only was the island lush with vegetation, but it also had a lot of World of Warcraft, which was barely enough to keep Ethan. Furthermore, List would often provide it with potions and other resources, so it was barely enough to keep one dragon on an island. This is just a stopgap measure. When they found an archipelago suitable for building a country, List would build a dragon nest for Ethan and Leo to raise the 2 dragons. Perhaps not only these 2, but his old friend, the invisible dragon, should also come. The invisible dragon comes once a year. I've been talking about it for a while now. I don't know if the invisible dragon was tricked by the smoke mission and flew here. This time, in addition to giving it a good meal of smoked grass and roast beef, I also want to give it a mystifying dragon's mind fruit. The value of the space gem is far greater than any other gem. The most important thing is that he has 3 dragons, which is more than enough to build a kingdom across the sea and annex the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Perfect. Just as he was fantasizing about the beautiful future, Lucy hurried down the stairs. "Your Highness, news from the expedition fleet." "What's the news?" "Captain Yevich sent a message that they have found a new archipelago. They have explored 3 islands. The distance between the islands is relatively close, and these 3 islands are very large. The largest is the size of Coral Island, and the smallest is the size of Black Horse Island. There are many coral reefs around it." "Is that so?" Liszt couldn't sit still. He calmed down his excitement and went upstairs with Lucy. Lucy was fiddling with the magic platform. The sound of the magic reaction came from the compass, and she was recording something with one hand. After a period of training, the twins with good magic talent have become qualified operators and transmitters. They operate the magic platform rhythmically like a DJ in a nightclub. "Your Highness." Seeing Liszt arrive, Lucy immediately put down the quill in her hand and bowed to Liszt. "No need to be so polite, operate the magic platform seriously." "What did Yevich say?" Lucy moved a chair, and Liszt sat down. "Captain Yevich's fleet has continued to set off, following the terrain of the islands to search other sea areas, and to determine the number and size of the new islands as soon as possible." "Very good, contact Yevich for me." The magic platform has entered the 3.0 era, its functions have been further improved, and the quality of communication has greatly improved. Although it wasn't as convenient as natural communication, it could transmit more information like chatting. After half an hour of repeated communication, Liszt basically understood the location of the new islands. It was only 400 kilometers away from the island where the light green gem dragon was temporarily living. The location was slanted to the southwest. The first island is 500 kilometers away from the new island, and the new island is 400 kilometers away from the new islands. This is a bit exciting. This should be the real islands. The first island is only a remote corner of the continental shelf, the new islands are the real highlands of the continental shelf. He immediately ordered Yevich to search for the new islands, and ordered the other 2 exploration fleets to immediately move towards the new islands. They could explore this new islands together. The communication with the magic platform ended. Leaning against the back of the chair, Liszt leisurely tasted a cup of green tea sent by Mrs. Morrison. Lucy asked curiously, "Your Highness, if we find the new islands, will we be able to establish our own country?" "Of course." "Will your Highness become a king?" "That depends on the situation. Maybe I will only become a Grand Duke, then our country will be called the Flame Grand Duchy. If I have more dragons, then I will directly become a king, and our country will be called the Flame Kingdom," Liszt said with a smile. He had a good impression of the clever and cute twins. The 2 little Lolas were not only cute, they were talented, and their personalities were also very likable. These twin sisters, he gradually felt like his own daughters were growing up. Liszt, whose soul was already more than 30 years old, and the twins, who were less than 10 years old, did indeed have a father and daughter age gap, as well as a sense of expectation for his daughter to grow into phoenixes. A few days ago. Chapter 800. Your Highness, when you and Teacher Aichi explore the new islands, can you take me and my sister with you? Ruth asked with her big, cute eyes. Lucy hurriedly scolded, "Ruth, don't make rude requests to His Highness." Although Ruth was a little bold, she did not dare to defy her sister. She could only bow to Liszt and apologize, "I'm sorry, Your Highness." Ruth was too reckless. "Please forgive me." Liszt waved his hand, "Don't be nervous, Lucy, Ruth. If your teacher Aichi doesn't refuse, there's nothing wrong with taking you with her. It was a pleasant and interesting thing to have two cute little Lola's companions on a voyage, not to mention that they could control the magic stage. Therefore, Achi, who was researching how a dragon turtle could mutate into a lightning dragon turtle from Dragon Turtle Island, quickly agreed to the sisters' request. Under List's urging, she had already accepted Lucy and Ruth as her magic apprentices. The twins' former teacher, Chris Truth, did not object to this at all. She even envied the twins for being able to listen to the magic shooter's teachings at any time. Of course, Chris actually thought too much. Achi was the twins' teacher in name, but she had no intention of teaching them in private. She only liked to study magic on her own, or assign some research tasks to mages. She did not like to communicate with others, let alone teach. It was indeed a waste for a magic shooter to teach magic apprentices. Any ordinary mage from the Guild of Magic could complete the teaching. "Thank you, teacher." "Thank you, Your Highness." The twins cheered excitedly. List nodded and said, "Go and pack your luggage. We'll leave at any time." He and Achi's sailing trip was to leave as soon as they said they would, without the slightest delay. At this time, Nami's weak cry came from a jade box hanging on the ceiling. Chirp. It flew out of the box and landed on Achi's palm, looking at Achi pitifully. It had not gone out to work for a while, but stayed in the laboratory, waiting for Achi's return, seeking the care of the owner of the contract. At this time, its expression was sad, still fighting against the hindrance of evolution. Achi holds Nami in her hand and smiles, "Don't worry, Nami. Achi will take you with me. We are going to explore the new world in the archipelago discovered by my brother." Tweet. Nami rubbed her head against Achi's fingers and dozed off with satisfaction. One day later, List arranged the affairs around him properly, and Achi handed over the busy magic experiments one by one, before setting off for the new islands. Rumble. Walala. Off we go, see! Cried the twins merrily from the bow. Before coming to Black Horse Island, they were the children of serfs in the countryside of the Kingdom of Eagle and had never seen the sea in their lives. Coming to Black Horse Island to live, sailing is a common occurrence. He has long overcome his fear of the sea, but he still does not dare to swim in it. The blazing flame, loaded with fruits, vegetables, magic potions, and other supplies, followed the planned route and braved the wind and waves at a speed of 500 kilometers per hour. The new islands are about 4,000 kilometers away from Black Horse Island. According to Earth's data, it is probably the distance between the northernmost Bohai Sea in China and the southernmost South China Sea. The average speed of the Palace fast-sailing ship is about 10 knots, or 18 kilometers per hour, and can sail up to 400 kilometers a day with a downwind. The Sapphire family relied on the Palace fast-sailing ship to dominate the aquamarine sea, but there is a lot of headwind and windless sailing on the sea, so it can travel up to 200 kilometers a day. From Black Horse Island to the new islands, it takes 20 days for the Palace fast-sailing ship to sail. If it is replaced by a merchant ship with a speed of 3 knots, it will probably take 2 months, and that is if the sailing is smooth. However, for the blazing flame, there is no such thing as headwind, downwind, or windless. Achi controlled the waterspout to push and raced directly on the sea. 8 hours later, they had arrived at the location recorded on the nautical chart. Then List called out the little fire dragon Leo, flew into the blue sky and white clouds, and searched for land. The search went smoothly, and it took only 15 minutes to find the island. This was also the reason for the increasing accuracy of the nautical chart. Achi has been studying astrology for a long time, and combined with telescope technology, developed a set of devices that can measure the angle between the sun or other stars and the sea level or ground level. She also wrote a book, Star Orientation Light Measurement in Navigation, to direct the application of the device. After seeing this device, List directly grabbed the naming rights, call it a sextant. In fact, it is a different version of a sextant. With a sextant, it is more accurate to measure the position of a ship during the voyage. Basically, to prevent the situation of getting lost at sea, the fleet from the Flame territory used a sextant during the day and night, and only when it was cloudy would they look at the nautical compass, a device similar to a compass, which also pointed in one direction, but not in a north-south direction, but in a direction of 15 degrees west by north. There is no theoretical explanation as to why it points in this direction. A chi, set off in the 195-degree direction, the island is just ahead. After finding the island, List immediately contacted a chi. As for the 195-degree, it was List's invention. He combined it with the nautical compass, divided the position coordinates into 360 degrees, and clearly indicated each direction. 195 degrees was a little west by south. This invention originated from the game PlayerUnknown's Battleground, Battle Royale, that he played on Earth. There was a 360-degree direction indicator, which was very convenient for reminding teammates of the enemy's position. However, before the Flame could approach the island, Lucy shouted loudly, "Your Highness, teacher, the magic platform has sent a message. The Discovery has encountered an unknown large whirlpool and is being swallowed by the whirlpool. It is calling for help." A chi immediately said, "Coordinates, direction." After the twins reported the Discovery's position, the Flame immediately changed direction and rushed towards the sea where the Discovery was located. Along the way, they maintained communication with the magic platform. The Discovery was still struggling, and the Exploration and Opportunity were too far away to rescue them, so they could only wait for the Flame. Unfortunately, when a chi continuously adjusted the direction and finally reached the vicinity of the large whirlpool, the Discovery signal had disappeared from the magic platform. "Your Highness, teacher," Lucy said sadly, "I can't find the magic platform's signal of the Discovery." List walked up to the bow of the Flame. He was in a bad mood, but he still comforted himself. Accidents are inevitable when exploring the sea. They were the pioneers of a new country, and the new country will not forget their contributions. He looked up at the large whirlpool that seemed to be able to swallow the entire world. With a chi controlling the waterspout, the Flame slowly approached the large whirlpool. Chapter 801. "Brother, the magic power of this whirlpool is very special," a chi said after casting magic eyes and carefully observing the whirlpool. List also cast magic eyes to observe, and indeed, as a chi said, this huge, mysterious, and almost motionless whirlpool had a special magic structure. Using magic eyes, one could not observe two obvious signs of magic power in ordinary seawater, but the whirlpool was full of blue-white water attribute light. And the closer to the center of the whirlpool, the brighter the magic light became, and the blue light was gradually overshadowed by the white light. The most peculiar thing was that the light seemed to have a fault. It was a special optical phenomenon, as if a large number of broken glass had been placed in the center of the whirlpool, disturbing the path of the light and making it incoherent. "What's the reason for this?" "I don't know." "Then let me ride a dragon and cast Dragon Eye Orbit to take a look," List said immediately. "Brother, be careful. The magic power of this whirlpool is unusual. A chi can feel that it is difficult to control the seawater in the periphery, and the central area is simply uncontrollable. Don't worry, I will only observe from the sky and will not approach the sea," List called out to Leo. Leo was somewhat dissatisfied with List, who repeatedly disturbed his rest. Roar. He had been sullen recently. Without the volcano on Dodo Island, the growth of his strength was limited, so he was naturally in a bad mood. "Cooperate seriously and reward the potion when we return." List rode on the Dragon Tooth platform and quickly flew over the whirlpool. Casting Dragon Eye Orbit, the world became a clear visual effect. Every trace of flowing seawater was full of dynamic beauty. Magic lines outlined back and forth, rendering a different whirlpool. It was like an exquisite sculpture, and the messy magic colors vaguely revealed a mysterious law. As he continued to climb, the whirlpool continued to shrink, revealing its complete appearance. It was an irregular oval whirlpool, the edge somewhat similar to the Milky Way, with cantilevers extending out. The magic light of the cantilevers was brighter, but the brightest was in the center of the whirlpool, which was almost like a huge silver-white sun. However, there were clear signs of fracture in the small sun, which was the fracture of magic power. Strange. Just what kind of structure is this? The crack seemed to form a gigantic magic array. Liszt had been communicating with a Qi for many years, so he was no stranger to magic arrays. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it was a huge magic array. The cantilevers and the center reflected each other. Every magic crack was a part of the magic array. He subconsciously took out a notebook and a quill from his space ring, and began to sketch a picture based on what he saw. After the sketch was completed, the rough lines of the magic array were basically completed according to the scale. Only then did he put away his pen and paper and descended toward the center of the great maelstrom to observe the situation. If one were to disperse the trail of the dragon eye and observe it with the naked eye, it would be a deep, pitch-black tunnel. The sea around the huge whirlpool was slanting toward the center in a parabola. When it reached the center, the parabola was almost a straight line. However, the water continued to spiral downwards, forming a circular well with a diameter of about 1 kilometer. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. When he used the trail of the dragon eye again, the deep whirlpool was immediately covered in dense magic power. The cracks were distributed at the position of the deep well, overlapping, intersecting, and juxtaposing, presenting a complex yet orderly situation. Liszt took out a pen and paper again, and drew the structure clearly. The two drawings of magic lines basically depicted the magic structure of the great maelstrom. Liszt took a deep breath and steered Leo away from the center of the whirlpool. Before he understood the situation of the whirlpool, he did not dare to casually explore the deep whirlpool well. Indeed, he had the urge to dive in and solve the riddle, but a strong desire to survive dominated Liszt, causing him to be cautious in all aspects. Bang! Jumping onto the bow of the flame, Liszt handed the two drawings to a Qi. Take a look at the magic structure of the great maelstrom. I feel like it's a huge magic array. I wonder if it's a naturally formed magic array or a magic array set up by some ancient magic shooters. A Qi took the drawings and was quickly fascinated by them. As time passed, she still did not look up. She even found a seat, took out a notebook, and kept copying the drawings and revising the lines. From time to time, she would put down her pen and walk out to use the eye of magic to personally observe the great maelstrom before going back to continue revising. After a long time, a Qi said again, "Brother, a Qi wants to see the great maelstrom from the sky." No problem. Liszt summoned Leo and promised him 10 potions as a reward. He smoothly rode Leo and took a Qi to the sky above the great maelstrom. "Brother, use the trail of the dragon eye to help a Qi look at the details. Tell me, I'll explain it to you. What does the edge of the well on the left look like?" "It's the two intersecting fracture lines. It's zigzagging, and there's a groove in the middle. It's the point where the light suddenly broke. Look at this point, and then look up about a finger's length. Do you see there? There's actually a groove hidden under the light." Well, a Qi got it. "What's the trajectory of the two parallel fracture lines at the 72-degree direction?" One was asking, and the other was explaining. After half an hour, the sun set in the west, and it was already evening. Only then did a Qi reluctantly ask Liszt to send her back to the flame, which was already far away from the great whirlpool. She ate some fruits, and while Liszt was eating heartily with Lucy and the twins, she continued to immerse herself in studying this huge magic formation that she had no idea how it was formed. It was already certain that it was a magic circle, but she had not deciphered the information of the magic circle. At night, a Qi asked Liszt to take her to the sky again to observe the magic structure of the great maelstrom at night. Her eye of magic was a super magic, but its effect was equivalent to List's eye of magic. It was not very strong and could not be compared to the trail of the dragon eye. However, List described what he saw in detail and let Qi perfect the magic circle bit by bit. In the middle of the night, when List was teasing Nami, who was not very energetic, Qi finally raised her head and said, "Brother, Qi has deciphered the Great Maelstrom. This is a naturally formed magic circle, it's a magic transmission circle." Magic transmission circle? List exclaimed unconsciously. This news was simply too explosive, and he couldn't remain calm. "You're saying that this Great Maelstrom is the teleportation formation I've been searching for all this time? Or that the teleportation formation that prevailed during the era of the Moon Empire really exists?" Qi nodded seriously. "Yes." At the same time, in an unknown location, several campfires were lit. The injured knight had hunted a few wild animals from the forest and gave them to the disabled who were cooking porridge by the campfire. Next to another campfire, two magicians in magic cloaks were fiddling with a broken compass-shaped device. The knight in the lead dropped the game and walked to the side of the magician. He said, "Sir Glanny, is the magic stage repaired? We must contact His Highness as soon as possible." Chapter 802. This chapter is a guaranteed update on the 13th, a magic array. It's actually a magic array. List did not know how many times he had come to the bow of the ship and looked at the huge whirlpool in the distance. Under the illumination of the moonlight, the Great Maelstrom resembled the maw of a monstrous beast, sending chills down one's spine. However, List was filled with boundless excitement. Ever since he had traveled to this world, he had heard many legends about the Moon Empire. Among them, the most popular one was related to magic circles. Legend had it that in the center of the legendary continent, there was a mountain called Muragaudin. It was tens of thousands of meters high, and mortals could not climb it. Even the dragon knight could not fly to the top. The violent storm halfway up the mountain could tear humans and dragons into pieces. However, the Moon Empire had set up a magic array at the top of the mountain. Thus, according to legend, those magic shooters could climb the mountain to light the magic array and teleport to the moon. The name of the Moon Empire originated from the moon, and even the name of Muragaudin Mountain, Muragaudin, was the modern translation of the ancient language of the moon, which meant guardian knight of moonlight. In the era of the Moon Empire, the knight training system already existed, but they all existed as squires of sorcerers. To this day, these matters regarding the magical teleportation portal had become nonsense. The weave had shrunk for some reason, and the dominance of the magi had been overthrown by the knight. The search for the truth could not compare to the thirst for dragons. The exploration of experiments could not compare to the rush for wealth. The exploration of magic could not compare to the worship of combat aura. Magic shooters had not appeared in this corner of the continent for hundreds of years, and mages had gradually degenerated into technicians who made magic equipment and refined potions. Occasionally, he would stir up some trouble and create some news, but he would not be able to affect the overall situation. Gradually, people began to deny the Moon Empire. They dismissed those things that were legendary but didn't exist in reality as nonsense. The teleportation magic array was one of the myths. List had lost count of the number of times he had seen the real existence of the legendary things. He had developed a strong tolerance and began to believe that those teleportation portals, the humans on the moon, and the Elven King were all real. It was precisely this attitude that had allowed him to gradually develop his research into teleportation magic arrays. He never imagined that a teleportation magic array actually existed in this world. The surprise was too great. Qi, where do you think this teleportation magic array leads to? Can we teleport by jumping into it? He swallowed his saliva and guessed in a scorching tone, does it lead to the Undersea Kingdom, to the moon, or to Mount Muragaudin? Should we give it a try? Qi was not as enthusiastic as List. She thought more about the teleportation array itself. Brother, the structure of this magic array is very stable. It may be able to teleport accurately without any errors. However, if you want to cross the teleportation array, you still need to do a lot of preparation work. Only by doing thorough research can you minimize the danger. Of course I know, but this is a teleportation magic circle, a chi. Yes, I know. A chi smiled. List was a little disappointed to see a chi forcing a smile in response to his excitement. Everything about a chi was good except that she was a little quiet. She was becoming more and more like a straight-A student. As an underachiever, List admired, respected, and envied the top students, but in fact, he wanted to go crazy with the underachiever even more. In short, it was a chi's turn to arrange various experiments and research on the teleportation magic array. On the other side, Nigel Barkskin Shield was seriously recording the ship's log. As one of the first elite Earth Knight of the Eagle Kingdom to surrender to List, he was put in an important position and was appointed as the captain of the Discovery. He was lucky to survive this special shipwreck. His first task was to save the ship, and his second task was to record the log, to ensure that His Highness could keep abreast of the situation of the expedition. He looked up. He glanced at the magician who was busy repairing the magic platform by the bonfire, then at the knight and sailors who were cooking porridge and barbecuing meat, and at the side of the Discovery that had been smashed into a pile of broken wood. Then he looked at the vast primitive jungle around him, and the huge mountain waterfall that was rushing under the moonlight in the distance. Nigel picked up a pen and began to write. There was a special black box in the captain's room to store pen, ink, paper, and other items used to write the log. The items inside were well preserved during the shipwreck. June 5th, the weather was clear. Everything happened so suddenly that I didn't know where to start writing. At 3:00 in the afternoon, the Discovery set off from the third island of the new archipelago and continued southwest to search for the next island. The lookout found that the sea ahead was very large, so I ordered a closer observation. Unexpectedly, just as the ship approached the waves, it was swept away by the turbulent undercurrent and began to spiral forward. Captain Nigel immediately opened the water-calming orb kept in the captain's room. Unfortunately, after activating the water-calming orb, it still could not calm the seemingly calm but dangerous undercurrent. The Discovery uncontrollably approached the depths of the whirlpool. By the time the lookout discovered the whirlpool, it was already too late to stop it. So they could only ask for help from List and report the situation using the magic platform. But before the flame could come to their rescue, the Discovery had already slid into the depths of the whirlpool and was swallowed by the deep whirlpool amidst the panic of the crew. The hull is seriously tilted. Everyone has to hold on to the railing to stand firm. The whirlpool sea is getting more and more tilted. The sky is hanging upside down. Soon we can no longer see the sun, only the turbulent whirlpool sea spinning above our heads. The force of the ship's rotation is getting stronger. Some sailors can't hold on and fell into the sea, disappearing without a trace. Just like that. The Discovery spiraled forward on the whirlpool's parabolic sea, being pulled step by step into the deep whirlpool. At that time, it was like being swept into the waves and surfing. I grabbed the rudder but couldn't control any direction. The Discovery even began to disintegrate. There were planks falling off one by one. Just when I thought I was going to die, the only light disappeared and darkness came. The water suddenly stabilized, but the Discovery was still moving forward at high speed. I don't know how long it took. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. I wanted to speak, but my mouth was open but I couldn't say a word. Even my hands and feet couldn't move. I saw countless arcs of light flashing around me, like lightning or aurora. The next moment, a dazzling light shone, and then I felt my body flying. It wasn't just me flying, but the Discovery was flying. When I could open my eyes, I saw the sky spinning violently. I could see the lush forests and tall mountains, as well as the bright sunlight on the horizon. Unfortunately, the next second, the Discovery crashed into the forest. There was a loud rumble and a strong dizziness hit. Nigel almost fainted. When I endured the pain all over my body and crawled out of the damaged captain's cabin, I was shocked to find that the Discovery had fallen into a pile of rotten wood, and the place where we crashed had become a wild forest. The huge mountain waterfall in the distance made me realize that the Discovery had flown out of the cave at the mouth of the waterfall. Chapter 803. Closing the Logbook. Nigel Barkskin's shield began to patrol the simple camp built next to the ruins of the Discovery. It was surrounded by forest, and he had to be on high alert. Otherwise, if the World of Warcraft approached, it would threaten the survival of the crew. At that moment, he suddenly heard something above his head. It seemed to be the sound of something piercing through the air. Then, there was a loud bang in the forest in the distance. What's going on? Nigel and the others immediately tensed up. Unfortunately, it was nighttime, and they did not dare to leave the camp and search in the forest. After a while, when there was no more movement, Nigel relaxed a little. He temporarily put aside the idea of searching and began to enjoy a simple lunch with the night. No matter how simple it was still better than the salted meat and vegetables on the voyage. Unfortunately, there was no campfire atmosphere. Not only did they have to worry about the forest, but they also had to worry about the unknown world. They did not know what they had encountered. In the blink of an eye, they had come from the vast sea to the endless forest. They did not know how far they had traveled. They did not know if they had appeared on an island near the Great Maelstrom, or in some other corner of the world. Let us mourn for the lost crew members. After setting up the simple tableware, Nigel motioned for everyone to mourn. Out of the 100 crew members of the Discovery, 16 were missing, 52 were dead, and only 32 survived. 7 of them were seriously injured, and it was unknown if they could survive. The mourning had just ended. There was another whoosh above their heads, followed by a loud rumble in the forest in the distance. It was as if a large rock had fallen from the sky. It was much weaker than a meteorite, but the ground still trembled slightly. This is... Nigel could no longer ignore the commotion. At that moment, Mage Glanny Truth, who was repairing the magic platform, suddenly said, "I understand, it's Her Highness." Her Highness? Of course it's Her Highness. Her Highness has discovered the Great Maelstrom and is studying it. Glanny was very excited. The Great Acheron will definitely be able to decipher the secret of the Great Maelstrom and come to save us. We need to stay here and repair the magic platform, and cooperate with Her Highness and Acheron. Then, he loudly announced, "We will not rest tonight. We will repair the magic platform overnight and contact Her Highness as soon as possible." The other magician also nodded deeply. "I support Sir Glanny's opinion." Naturally, the knights had no objections. After all, the repair work was done by the magicians, and they only needed to assist. As if to prove Glanny's guess, every 10 minutes or so, a stone or something wood was past his head. Tracing back to the source, it just so happened to be that tall waterfall mountain. The surviving crew members of the unknown forest were eagerly waiting for the High Mage to finish his research. And that was indeed the case. From time to time, the flame would transport rocks, trees, World of Warcraft, and other objects from the nearby islands and throw them into the great whirlpool to study the changes of the objects as they passed through the whirlpool. List rode on Leo and hovered in the air above the big whirlpool. He used the dragon eyes orbit and kept peeking at the details of the magic composition of the big whirlpool. In the end, all the information was gathered in Achi's hands. This was a very complicated change. Even after dozens of experiments, she still couldn't figure it out. Big brother, Achi doesn't know if this is a man-made magic array, but the principles behind its operation are too profound. There are many parts that Achi doesn't understand at all. Don't worry, be patient. We can use this place as a long-term magic experiment site. List guessed that the crew of the Discovery had probably perished. So after calming down from his excitement, he wasn't in a hurry to explore what the other side of the teleportation array looked like. The big whirlpool was here and wouldn't run away. There was no need to be anxious. He immediately ordered the exploration and opportunity to continue searching for other islands in the new archipelago. He also sent the other 2 exploration fleets to search for other islands. There was no need for them to investigate and explore the big whirlpool here. Other than a Qi who could control the flow of water to resist, the others had no resistance. Late at night, a Qi lacked experimental materials, so she decided to make a trip back to Thorn Castle. List suggested, why don't we pull some of the mages over and put them on an island not far from the big whirlpool? We can set up a magic laboratory to crack the big whirlpool. I feel that it will take at least a year and a half before the secret of the teleportation array can be completely unraveled. Yeah. A Qi nodded. So the flame made its way back through the night and returned to the newly built dock at the mouth of the canal to the sea under the sun the next day. List personally coordinated the mages of the Guild of Magic. Chris, come and confirm a list of great mages. This list needs to be of a trustworthy level, and great mages who can be transferred out for a long period of time and obey orders. Chris was already a qualified administrator. She immediately gave a list. The Guild of Magic has gathered 18 great mages, and 7 of them meet your requirements, Your Highness. They are Kenley, Lars, Silaire, Delaka. Then first arrange for Kenley, Lars, Silaire, and Delaka, and then select a group of trustworthy mages to follow the magic shooters to carry out field research projects overseas. Kenley was a member of the Magic Elephant family from Iron and Steel Ridge. Lars and the other 2 were once List's captives. They had already integrated into the Guild of Magic and were happy and content. Kenley had even been elected as the vice president of the Guild of Magic. Chris was the executive vice president. Your Highness, may I know what kind of research project it is? Chris asked curiously. There was nothing to hide from Chris. List said straightforwardly, you should already know about the huge whirlpool that our expedition fleet discovered at sea. A Qi has determined that the whirlpool is the ancient legendary teleportation magic array. Teleportation magic array? Chris's mouth was agape. It took a while for her to recover. Your Highness, I request to personally participate in the research of the whirlpool. You don't have to participate for the time being. The Guild of Magic can't do without your management, especially the experimental resources needed for magic research. We still need you to coordinate. List did not say what he was implying. In fact, Chris's research on the soul was not bad, but other aspects were ordinary. After all, she was just a newly advanced great mage, and had gradually transitioned to administrative work. She was gradually becoming unfamiliar with magic research. All right, I hope Your Highness can keep me informed of the progress of the research on the whirlpool. Of course. Only by knowing the progress can you better allocate resources. At noon, Chris gathered Kenley and the other 3. Chapter 804. This chapter is, The Bug's Childhood. It takes a while to collect experimental equipment. A Qi did not conduct theoretical research, but mainly prepared these experimental materials. It was expected to take a week to prepare. During this period, a Qi went to the Maelstrom 3 times and helped explore the surrounding archipelagos. Eventually, she found 7 large islands within a week, with Black Horse Island as the standard. However, the largest one was the one discovered before, the size of Coral Island. In addition, there were many small islands and coral reefs scattered around. This archipelago obviously could not be used to establish a country. List named it the second archipelago. It could only be used as a transit supply point, which disappointed him. However, it was still very important to discover the ancient legendary teleportation magic array, so the value of the second archipelago was still very high. Spreading out the nautical map, List once again studied the map hand-drawn by a Chi. 800 kilometers south of Black Horse Island were 3 islands, 1, 2, and 3, all smaller than Black Horse Island. 1,200 kilometers southeast of the 3 islands was Dragon Turtle Island. 2,500 kilometers south of the 3 islands was the first archipelago, all of which were smaller than Black Horse Island. 400 kilometers south of the first archipelago was the island inhabited by the light green gem dragon. It was newly named Midway Island and was about the size of Coral Island. 500 kilometers south of Midway Island was the second archipelago, 7 of which were larger than Black Horse Island. The largest was close to Coral Island and was named Whirlpool Island. From Black Horse Island directly to the second archipelago, there was a distance of about 4,000 kilometers. The maelstrom was located 23 kilometers south of Whirlpool Island, so the location of the magic laboratory was located on a beach on Whirlpool Island. In order to study this maelstrom, List even planned to build a small town on it, named Whirlpool Town. Then he would build a wizard tower and place the magic laboratory in the wizard tower. It is best to build small towns on all the islands along the way that can be anchored and supplied. Anyway, the more serfs we buy, the less trouble we have to migrate to reclaim the land. As long as the serfs in the supply town can support themselves, I don't need them to pay taxes. Usually, the sea trade of sea salt, white paper, and glass was a big business. Every year, there would be several opening orders, which were like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, and they would have to put real money into sacks. Therefore, List didn't care about the serfs' taxes. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't want to destroy the current social system, he really intended to eliminate all agricultural taxes. Of course, he didn't have to rely on taxes to eat, but other nobles still had to live by squeezing serfs, including his father. The Tulip family also needed to squeeze serfs. Let's build a small town on one of the 3 islands, Mangrove Town. Nami once managed the mangrove forest here. Let's build a small town on the Crescent Island of the first island, Crescent Town. Let's build a small town on the middle island, Greenlight Town. Let's build a small town on the Whirlpool Island. That's it. He added 4 towns to the map. This was the next step of his plan. However, he thought of a problem that he had not paid attention to before. I have been asking the exploration fleet to search for the islands, but it seems that I have forgotten to measure the distance between these islands and the mainland coastline. It should still be in the coastal area of the Eagle Kingdom, but most of the coastline should not have been developed yet. The living areas of humans on the legendary continent were mostly concentrated in open plains and freshwater areas where large rivers flowed. There were not many people in the mountains, virgin forests, and seaside. When a Chi has time, I should let her set off from the second island and explore the mainland coastline to see the situation of the land there. Maybe in the future, the second island can be developed, and we can directly raid the Eagle Kingdom from here and seize the resources. At least he could explore the mainland from this direction, and the wild virgin forests were rich and undeveloped treasures for him. After marking the map, List walked to the balcony. Looking at the distant sky, he was just about to recite a poem, but a chirping sound interrupted his thoughts. It was the 3 fire dragon birds, Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple. They were circling around Ainfant's wormstalk, the phoenix parasol tree. After leaving the volcano, Ainfant finally planted the phoenix parasol tree near the Thorn Castle. The little fire dragon Leo would often sleep beside the phoenix parasol tree, and Ainfant would crazily touch Leo's scales and indulge in self-indulgence. Although this was a phenomenon of big elves evolving, List still felt strange. He always felt that Ainfant had a heavier taste than the big elf Ash who liked rope art. Suddenly, in the distance, another big elf flew over. It had a light green elite appearance, and there was a small sapling on its head with a red fruit on the sapling. This big elf stopped quietly in front of List and made a clear and melodious voice. Chirp, List, is a Chi in the lab? Yes, Nami. Go find her yourself. Thank you, List. Chirp. Nami flew into the castle from the balcony and went to play with a Chi. Just a few days ago, Nami finally cheered up from her depression and quickly grew bigger, successfully evolving into a mangrove big elf. She became the 5th big elf in the territory after the giant kelp big elf Parker, the pea big elf Ash, the phoenix parasol big elf Infant, and the thorn big elf Ella. The 5 big elves surrounded List and won countless honors for him. However, the response was much smaller. When List's big elves were mentioned, all the subjects and nobles took it for granted. His Highness List is a dragon knight. Isn't it normal to have a few big elves? If the Fire Lord has a dragon elf, we can have a good chat. In fact, this was very unusual. But from the big nobles such as the Oxtail Marquis to the small street vendors, they all felt that it was normal. It had to be said that the light of the Dragon Knight identity was so strong that List couldn't make the headlines if he didn't do some dragon slaying. Wow! As soon as Nami flew into the aisle, she saw Ella, a big elf, patrolling the aisle with her hands on her hips. Chirp, hello, Ella. Ella glanced at Nami arrogantly and didn't want to pay attention to her. Nami magically took out a small bag of purple jade powder, which was Ella's favorite kind of jade powder. Chirp, Ella, this is for you. Ella wanted to remain arrogant, but looking at the jade powder, she couldn't resist her inner desire. She took the jade powder, sniffed it, and hung it on her waist. When she looked at Nami again, she nodded gently. I like purple jade powder, remember? Chirp, Nami remembers. Well, give me purple jade powder next time. Chirp. Wow. For the sake of the purple jade powder, Ella reluctantly responded to Nami with a few words, then continued to put her hands on her waist and patrolled her territory. Chapter 805. When List arranged his idea of building a town and a mage tower, a Chi and other mages were almost ready for the experiment materials needed. The twins Lucy and Ruth, who were controlling the magic platform in the laboratory, received a signal from the Discovery. At first, the magic platform signal was very chaotic, and it was impossible to decipher what message was sent over there, but after half an hour, the signal became clear. The first message he received was from Captain Gurnier Barkskin Buckler. Your Highness, the Discovery has crashed, 56 people were killed, 16 are missing, and 28 survived. We fell into the maelstrom, but rushed out of a cave in a mountain waterfall. We are surrounded by virgin forests, and there is a World of Warcraft event, so we can't go out to explore. We can only stick to the camp and wait for help. There are still people alive on the Discovery. When List received the news, he couldn't believe it. The maelstrom, which seemed to be a terrifying abyss, turned out to be a magic array that could be passed safely. However, one end of the magic array was a bit exciting. It turned out to be a cave in a mountain waterfall, which caused the Discovery to fall from a high altitude and killed more than half of the crew. Lucy, reply to Gunil and tell them to wait patiently. I am cracking the maelstrom channel and will go to rescue them at any time. Yes, Your Highness. Lucy quickly pressed the button of the magic compass and sent a message. A Chi reminded, Brother, we should determine the coordinates of the Discovery immediately. List nodded, well, Lucy, ask Gunil where they are. After a while, the magic platform received a response, His Highness will not abandon us, the Knight's glory favors us. The sextant has been broken, and it is impossible to determine the specific location, but according to the calculations of the two mages, we should be. The other side sent a string of nautical coordinates. It was a rough location. A Chi just glanced at the string of data and had already calculated, Brother, if the good coordinates are not wrong, their position is about 7,000 or 8,000 kilometers south of Black Horse Island. Using the maelstrom as a coordinate, it is about 10 degrees south and west, nearly 4,000 kilometers away in a straight line. A teleportation magic array directly teleported the Discovery to 4,000 kilometers away. Jay Chou and Fei Yuqing had to sing 4 songs of 1,000 miles away to reach such a distance. If 1 kilometer was equal to 2 miles, they would need to sing 8 songs. Lucy, ask them if they have any adverse reactions. A moment later, the magic platform replied, there are no adverse reactions to their bodies, but some of the injured have yet to recover. Currently, the knights are circulating their battle chi well, and the magicians are able to cast spells freely. Their sleep is normal, their mental state is normal, and their consciousness is normal. Ask them if they saw the rocks, trees, and World of Warcraft that were thrown into the maelstrom. Yes, but these things fell quite far away, and we were blocked by World of Warcraft, so we couldn't explore it. Ask them to describe the process of passing through the Great Whirlpool and describe the specific situation of the waterfall. After more than an hour of detailed questioning, List and Achi finally understood the situation of the Great Maelstrom teleportation array. It was indeed a safe teleportation channel. The only 2 dangers were that the whirlpool was extremely fast, and there was a risk of the boat breaking up. The second was that the moment the boat rushed out of the cave under the waterfall, it would be thrown high into the sky and then fall. As long as he could avoid these 2 dangers, the Great Maelstrom would be a safe and efficient teleportation array. Big Brother, we should send a batch of supplies and experimental materials to the survivors of the Discovery, including sextant and other equipment, and then let them cooperate with us over there. That's for sure. List nodded. But we might need a chi to personally go to the sea 7 or 8,000 kilometers away to see if there's an island there, or if it's a corner of the continent. Okay. The accidental contact with the Discovery turned the Great Maelstrom's research around a new peak. Although the research still needed to be followed up, it was no longer urgent. This was especially true for List, who was completely focused on the other side of the Great Maelstrom. According to Gurnier's description, it was a vast primeval forest, which meant that they were either on a large island or in a corner of the continent. In short, with a teleportation array like the Great Maelstrom, it was enough to offset the thousands of kilometers of voyage, so the development value was very high. The communication was still ongoing. Every hour, Gurnier would report on their situation. Achi had already set off for the unknown sea, while List began to arrange the supplies, preparing to throw them through the Great Maelstrom to the Discovery. All the supplies must be wrapped in rubber leaves, lined with cotton and hemp, and finally tied up with hemp rope. While instructing Isaiah, the administrative officer of Kelp City, to gather the supplies, List carefully reminded, also, the ship must be constantly reinforced. Don't be afraid of wasting materials, it's best to apply rubber water several times to ensure that the ship can withstand a huge impact, even a fall from a high altitude. Now that he was a baron, Isaiah had become more stable and capable. Please rest assured, Your Highness, Isaiah will strictly pack the supplies, reinforce the ship, and ensure that the possibility of damage is minimized at every stage. After arranging the tasks, the sky was already dark. List stood on the balcony, looking at the starry sky, waiting for the good news Achi would bring him. He was not worried about Achi's safety. Achi had already become a magic shooter, perfectly mastering water magic, and was proficient in ice magic. Her strength was enough to dominate the sea. Moreover, Achi could swim at a speed close to the speed of sound, which was more than 1,200 kilometers per hour. It was impossible for any creature to catch up with Achi in the sea, even if it was a water dragon. In fact, whether water dragons lived in the sea or not was just speculation. There were records of water dragons found in a large swamp on the mainland, far away from the sea. Black Horse Island was 7 or 8,000 kilometers away from the Discovery. It would take Achi more than half a day to swim back and forth at full speed. However, Achi brought a magic platform with her. Before dawn the next day, Ruth, who was on night duty, was led by a servant to knock on List's bedroom door. Your Highness, Teacher Achilles' I'd sent a message. She has arrived at the coordinates of the discovery and found several huge islands, the largest of which is several times larger than Iron Hoof Island. Several times larger than Iron Hoof Island? List immediately got up, walked to the magic laboratory in his pajamas, and communicated with Achi. Achi introduced her findings. Because she could not locate the specific location of the discovery, she deliberately explored the nearby waters and had already explored more than 10 islands. The largest was several times larger than Iron Hoof Island, even larger than Blue Dragon Island. In addition, there were several large islands close to Iron Hoof Island. All right. Chapter 806. Achi returned to Black Horse Island with the discovery of the super-large archipelago. List was excited for a whole day. An island several times larger than Iron Hoof Island, even larger than Blue Dragon Island, could fully carry the weight of a country. Coupled with the surrounding large islands, this was simply a good location for the Country of Fire. According to Achi, the distance between the islands was very narrow, so the sailing time between each island would be greatly shortened, making it more suitable for habitation and development. The only drawback was that the archipelago was too far away from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. According to Achi's accurate remeasurement, it was 7,000 kilometers away. Even if the Great Maelstrom Magic Transmission Array was opened in the future and ships could be navigated, it would only shorten the distance by more than 3,000 kilometers. Moreover, the Great Maelstrom Magic Transmission Array seemed to be a one-way transmission array. A round trip between the two countries would take at least 11,000 kilometers. With the current speed of the Palace sailing ship at 10 knots, it would take more than 50 days. If it was an ordinary sailing ship at 3 knots, it would take at least half a year. It was really troublesome to move the territory's industries. List did not have to worry about himself. He and Achi could sail the Flame at any time. At a speed of 500 kilometers per hour, 10,000 kilometers would only take 20 hours. Plus the rest time, it would be easy to go back and forth every 2 days. However, he could not use the Flame to help with the migration of the territory. The Flame would have to sail back and forth for several months to move all the industries. Maybe I can let the Thunder Tortoise act as a porter? The speed of the Thunder Tortoise was not fast, but it was much faster than the speed of the Palace sailing ship. The ordinary Dragon Tortoise on Dragon Turtle Island was not slow either. Once tamed, it would be nice to pull a ship. Unfortunately, the difficulty of taming a Dragon Tortoise to pull a ship was probably not much less than the difficulty of developing a steamship. In any case, despite the remote location and the difficulty of navigation, the discovery of the new archipelago was still great news. From now on, List could start preparing to move the territory and develop the new archipelago to prepare for the establishment of a country. Should I establish a Grand Duchy first, or should I go directly to the kingdom? My old friend, the Invisible Dragon, hasn't come yet, so I'm not sure. What a happy worry. List withdrew his unreliable divergent thoughts and finally fixed his eyes on the magic teleportation array. What I should do is to support Achi in deciphering the magic teleportation array and strive to master the manufacturing method of the teleportation array so that we can directly build a teleportation array on Black Horse Island. The whirlpool on the sea could send the discovery 4,000 kilometers away. This was the most efficient form of transportation. Once the magical teleportation circle was developed, List would be able to realize his dream of ruling the seas around the legendary continent. Then, he would treat the legendary continent as his breeding ground and slowly hunt for prey. That was a good idea. However, the study of the teleportation magic array was not a simple matter. Looking at the Great Maelstrom's torrential weather, it was easy to understand that the teleportation formation was definitely not a simple door that could teleport someone to another door after pushing it open. Or perhaps it was a metal formation plate that could teleport someone thousands of miles away just by standing on it and waiting. However, no matter how difficult it was, List had to study the teleportation magic array. This kind of magic was the cornerstone of his dreams. Give me the teleportation magic array. I have the confidence to change this world. Once upon a time, his dream was very simple. He wanted to eat his fill, ride a dragon, and live a carefree life. Later, when he rode a dragon, his dream became to shelter a country, inherit his bloodline, and then explore the wonderful world. Now, his dream has expanded again. Exploring the world is no longer difficult. Changing the world is the challenge. Contract the fairy dragon and become the eternal dragon lord. Open the teleportation magic array, collect all kinds of dragons, and rule the legendary continent. Integrate magic and Do-Chi, and create a new era of technology and magic. Then, learn about this planet, and then go to the moon to have a look. If possible, I might be able to go on an interstellar trip. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. After a fierce fantasy, he slowly gathered his thoughts, put aside these grandiose ideas, and returned to reality. Although opportunities continued to come one after another, it was undeniable that his current foundation was still very shallow, and it was very difficult to support 2 dragons. He still needed to work hard and move in the direction of building a country. The news of the discovery of the archipelago was temporarily blocked by Liszt. He did not want to expose his trump card before things were clear. At least, he had not taken advantage of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire yet. He had risked the danger of being slain to save the Sapphire family. If he did not scrape off a layer of the Sapphire family's skin, he would suffer a big loss. In short, he wanted money, materials, and technology from the Sapphire Grand Duke. Under his constant urging, the territory received technical support from the shipyard. Finally, a brand new 3-masted cargo ship was launched. After sailing tests, it had met the requirements of various standards. After the new ship was launched and returned, Liszt heavily rewarded all the shipwrights in the shipyard. He personally named the cargo ship Expedition, which meant that the trade of the Flame territory would be carried out on expeditions to the major seas. It also meant that the prelude to the Great Voyage era was about to be started by him. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire had started the Great Voyage era, but it was still limited to a small area. Liszt's ambition could not be stopped even by the Devil's Sea. Traversing the 4 seas around the legendary continent, and then advancing to the Devil's Sea, from green water to blue water, this was the Great Voyage era. After the celebration of the launch of the new ship, Liszt rode on the back of the chocobo Loki and leisurely called out the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, Heart Island's abnormality. Finally completed the mission. I should go to the Heart Island to investigate again. He suddenly felt a little tired. I have to go with a Chi. I feel that ever since a Chi became a magic shooter, I can't do anything without her. Other than the fact that she might be more quick-witted than I am, it is more because of her invincible speed in the sea. It saves time and improves efficiency. Without a Chi, Liszt did not know how long it would take for him to explore the sea. His country would be even more distant. Fortunately, he had a Chi. Although he had trained a Chi to be a little less like a naive little siren, the intimacy between the two grew day by day. The corners of his mouth curled up. Liszt used his hand to tidy up the pale blonde hair on his forehead that was blown by the wind. The 19-year-old boy's face was still a little immature, but his temperament was extremely noble. A red cloak, silver armor, and a colorful mount. He was the most dazzling light on Black Horse Island. Wherever he passed, whether it was an official, a knight, or a working commoner and serf, they all showed a sincere expression of admiration, bowed their heads and saluted respectfully. He was used to this and was not touched. He was just concerned about the new smoke mission. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.